Hello and welcome to our YouTube channel W3 Runs. Today in this tutorial we are going to learn CSS Preprocessor, Sass. My name is Jantu Sarkar and I am your instructor for this tutorial. If you want to enhance your CSS skill to the next level, then this course is for you. I try to cover all the topic related Sass in this tutorial. So let's get started.
Hello guys, welcome back. In this tutorial, I am going to introduce you what is Sass, why we need to use Sass, and how can we use Sass. Our first question is, what is Sass? Sass stands for Syntactically Awesome Style Sheets. It is basically a CSS extension. We will do the same work in the Sass file as we do in the CSS file. Otherwise, we can call it CSS Preprocessor. Nowadays, it is very necessary that you should have knowledge of any CSS preprocessor. So, there are two famous CSS preprocessors, Sass and Less. And as compared Less, Sass is more popular because Sass comes with more advanced feature than Less. And if you complete this course, I want to say if you learn Sass, then automatically you can understand Less. Just you need to face little syntax difference, nothing else. Now the question is, as I told you earlier, it is work like CSS. Then why Sass is more popular than CSS? Because there is some reasons. Let me show you. First of all, it is very easy to manage. When we work with CSS, it creates very lengthy files. Sometimes it is very difficult to manage lengthy files. But if we talk about Sass, it is very easy to manage. The next reason that made it more popular, it increased our coding speed as compared normal CSS. But it is effective when you work with big projects, not the small projects. It is not very handy with small projects. Suppose you want to create a 5-page website, in that case, it's not very handy. But if you work with complex and multi-page website, then it is very handy. And the last thing that made it more popular, which is cross-browser compatibility. When you use CSS, some features are not supported in old browser. Sometimes it creates some big issue. But there is no issue with Sass. For its inbuilt feature, it's work with any old browser. Suppose if you work with Internet Explorer 7, otherwise if you work with latest version of Chrome browser, then you cannot see any difference in the output. It is work in the same way as it work in the latest version. Now let's see how we can use Sass file in our HTML file. The strange thing is we cannot use Sass file in HTML. Yes, it's true. We cannot use Sass file directly in HTML. Even browser cannot understand Sass code. Browser can only understand CSS files, not the Sass file. So when we need to create a Sass file, we need a compiler, Sass compiler. It compiles the Sass file and convert into CSS file. So you need to index CSS file on your HTML document, not the Sass file. But you need to type your code in the Sass file, not the CSS file. Then you compile the Sass code and convert into CSS file. Now the question is, what is Sass compiler? In the next video, we will know what is Sass compiler. Now let's talk about the features of Sass. And we are going to cover these features in our upcoming tutorials. Our first feature is variables. We can store value in variables as like programming language. Our second feature is nesting. Using nesting, we can assign a class into the another class. Otherwise, we can use a class into another ID. So this is the use case of nesting. Our next feature is partial and imports. We can create small Sass file and we can import it as like modules. Our fourth feature is Mixins. Using Mixins, you can reuse your code multiple times. Our fifth feature is extends. Suppose you type some code in a class, but you want to reuse these codes in another class. In that case, you can use extends. Our next feature is operators. Operator means arithmetic operators. If you need to execute any calculation, in that case, you can use these features like addition, multiplication, division, etc. Our next feature is functions. Our Sass comes with some inbuilt functions and you can use these functions. And also you can create your own functions like programming language. Then our second last feature is conditional directives. If you want to execute some conditional based work, like if-else condition, then you can use this feature. And our last feature is loops. I know you are already familiar with JavaScript and other programming languages. Then I don't need to explain what is loops and what is the use case of loops. You can use any kind of loop like for loop, do while loop, etc. These are all available in Sass. Now let's talk about Sass syntax. Basically, Sass came with two types of syntax, SCSS syntax and SASS syntax. These are basically extensions, SCSS, SASS. Basically, they look same, but there is a minor difference. Suppose we have a CSS syntax, and as you can see, we take total 3 different type of selectors, nav-ul, nav-li, and nav-anchor. As you can see, first we need to type nav-ul CSS values, then we need to type nav-li CSS value. At last, we need to type nav-anchor CSS values. But if we need to use the same code in SCSS syntax, in that case, we need to type like this. We need to select nav element one time. Then inside the curly braces, we need to type all the syntax, ul, li, and a. Basically, we call this system nesting. We are going to learn more about it in our upcoming tutorials. But if you type the same syntax in Sass code, then you need to type like this. You don't need to use any curly braces and any semicolons. You don't need to use any semicolon after a property. It's pretty similar with Python programming language. But for this tutorial, I'm going to use SCSS syntax, this one. Otherwise, it may confuse you. Now, let's talk about what kind of knowledge you need to start Sass. For Sass, you should have basic knowledge of HTML and you should have good knowledge of CSS. As I told you earlier, ultimately, Sass file compile into a CSS file. So, you should have knowledge of proper CSS syntax. And if I talk about code editor, you can use any code editor. For this tutorial, I'm going to use VS Code. You can use any code editor. So this is it for this tutorial. In the next tutorial, I'm going to talk about what is Sass compiler and which compiler we are going to use for this tutorial. So thanks for watching this video. Stay tuned for our next tutorial. Hello guys, good to see you back. In this tutorial, we are going to learn what is Sass compiler and how can we download the Sass compiler, which can help to compile our Sass file into a CSS file. As you can see in my browser, I opened Sass official website, sass-lang.com. As you can see, it provides some basic introduction of Sass. If you have time, then you can read it. Next, here you can see an option named Install. Just click on it. Then it's redirect to this page. If you scroll down a little bit, here you can see two different methods. Here you can see a compiler list. And here you can see another method that you can install your Sass using npm. So for this tutorial, I'm not going to use any node package. I would like to go with compiler. And I'm going to use a different compiler, not this ones. And our compiler name is Koala. As you can see, these are most of paid compilers. That's why I'm going to use a free compiler, which is Koala. Just you need to search Koala Sass compiler in your browser. And then you need to click on this link, koala-app.com. And this is the official website of this compiler. As you can see, Koala is a GUI application for Lass, Sass, Compass and CoffeeScript. We use it for compilation purpose for these languages. And you know that these are all preprocessor languages. So basically, using this application, we can compile all of these languages. So at first, we need to download this application. For download, you need to click on this green button, download. And as you can see, our download is already started. And next, you need to open your download folder. And here you can see the setup of this application, Koala setup. And now I'm going to install this application in my computer. Installation process is very simple. Just you need to double click on it. After that, you need to click on next. And then you can choose your directory where you want to install it. And this is the default location. Just click on next. As you can see, I already installed this application. So I don't want to install it again. But you need to complete your installation process. It can take 2 or 3 minutes to complete the installation process. And after complete the installation process, it open automatically. So for now, I'm going to cancel it. So after complete the installation process, you need to click on the koala icon to open it. Just you need to double click on it. As you can see, first time it's totally empty. And from this point, you can add any Sass file or a list file. So at first, I'm going to jump into my editor and create a Sass file. As you can see, there is a folder named demo. And inside this demo folder, there is another folder named CSS. And inside this CSS folder, I'm going to create a Sass file. So let's create a new file inside this folder. Style.scss. Otherwise, also you can use SASS syntax. But as I told you earlier, for this tutorial, I'm going to use SCSS syntax. And also you can see the Sass icon in this place. Now, let's add some Sass code in this document. I already copied some Sass code and I'm going to paste it here. This code is for demo purpose, so you don't need to understand it. From the next video, I'm going to talk about it. So as you can see, we create our Sass file successfully. Now, we need to create a CSS file in the same folder with the same name. So I'm going to create a CSS file in this folder, style.css. That's it. And we need to keep this file empty. We don't need to type any CSS code in this file. We need to leave it blank. And now we need to open our Koala software. So I'm going to open our Koala software. So as you can see, side by side, I open my Koala software and my current working directory. And here you can see two different files, a Sass file and a CSS file. And now we need to move this CSS folder in this application. Just I'm going to drag this folder and place it here. This is it. And here you can see it automatically pick all the CSS file and the Sass files. And now I'm going back to our code editor and I'm going to make some changes in our Sass file. Here you can see in my editor, I open my Sass file. With that, I also open my CSS file. If I show you my CSS file, as you can see, now it's totally empty. And now I am going back to the Sass file and I'm going to save this file. Control S. So if I save this file and show you my CSS file, here you can see the proper CSS code. So this Koala application compile the Sass code and convert into a CSS code. Here you can see with nav tag, it select UL tag also. But in our Sass file, inside the nav tag, we use UL tag. As you can see in our Sass file, we use nav keyword one time. But if I show you my CSS file, here you can see it use nav tag 3 times. With UL tag, with li tag, with anchor tag. Now, let's make some changes in our Sass file and see what happened. So here, I want to increase UL padding, 20 pixel. So I'm going to type 20 pixel. If I save this file and show you my CSS file, here you can see our changes are properly reflected in CSS file. Just you need to remember, you don't need to change anything in your CSS file. The best option is close your CSS file and then just work with only Sass file. I hope now it's clear for you how Sass compilers are worked. So thanks for watching this video. Stay tuned for our next tutorial. Hello guys, good to see you back. In this tutorial, we are going to learn Sass variables. But at first, let's try to understand what is variables and why we should use variables. Here you can see we create a selector of body tag. And inside this selector, we set background color red and font family Arial. With that, I'm going to take two other selector, H1 selector and span selector. Now, if you notice, you can see there is a common theme. They are colors. Color red. For body, I use red background color. And for H1 tag, I use red font color. And also I use the same color for span tag. So as you can see, red is the common color. Suppose we have used the same color in 10 places. And now we need to change the color. Then we have to go 10 places to change the color. And it takes a lot of time. For that, Sass introduce variables. In variables, we take name for a value. In our case, color, red. And our variable name is primary dash color. And you should remember, before the variable name, you need to use $sign. At first, we need to take a name of variable, then we need to store value in this variable. And next, we need to replace the color name with this variable name. The main benefit using variable is, when we need to change the primary color, suppose I want to change the primary color red to blue, then just we need to make changes in the variables, not the all selectors. We don't need to type blue color name all the places. Just you need to make changes in variable. This feature is also introduced in CSS, but the old browsers do not support the CSS feature. But Sass could. So without wasting your time, let's start the practical and see how variables are worked in Sass. Here you can see, side by side I open my Visual Studio Code Editor and my browser. And already you can see I create a basic web page layout. Here you can see the header, a menu bar, a sidebar, and also you can see the content part and a footer. If you notice, you can see there is a common color in this web page, header and footer. And if I hover these links, you can see the same color, background of this anchor tag. And also if I hover my sidebar items, you can see the same color, brown color. Not only that, if I select all the content, you can see the same background color behind the content. And now I'm going to show you how can we use variables. So as you can see, our primary color is brown. So we need to find the brown color. Here you can see the color name, brown. We use this color in anchor hover, header section, footer section, and lot of place. And now I want to replace this color value with the variable name. For that, we need to create a variable. So here I'm going to create a variable. So at first, we need to use $sign, dollar, and our variable name is main color. Main dash color. And I'm going to use brown color. And now I'm going to replace the color names with the variable name, main color. So at first, I'm going to replace top bar anchor hover selector, color or variable name. And also I'm going to replace it in header selector, main color. And then in our menu list item. Next, I want to replace it in our content section. And also I'm going to replace it in our sidebar. And next I'm going to replace it in our footer section. So it's done. So if I save this file and reload my browser, here you can see there is no changes. You can see the same header color, same footer color, and if I hover my cursor in my menu links, you can see the background color is also brown. So we successfully replace our color value with a variable. Now, I want to change the main color of this website, brown to blue. So when I hover my cursor, in menu items, I want blue background color. Basically, I want to say I want to change the main color, brown to blue. So I'm going to type blue here. If I save this file and reload my browser, you can see the result. You can see the blue color in header section, footer section, menu section, and sidebar section also. Now we don't need to change the color multiple times because now we use variable. Now you can put any color for one time and it's going to reflect it all the pages. This is the benefit of using variables. Just you need to use variable name as a value. Now if I show you my CSS file, here you can see there is no variables. Just you can see the color names, background blue. It's not only work with colors. You can put any type of value in variable. Suppose I want to change the font style all over the web page. In that case, we can use variable. So I'm going to create another variable. And our variable name is main font, $main dash font, colon. For now, I'm going to use Arial. And now I'm going to replace all the font value with this variable. So I'm going to replace Arial font with this variable, main font. And also we need to replace in header selector, main font. At last, I'm going to replace it in our content header, main font. If I save this file and reload my browser, as you can see, there is no changes. It's worked perfectly. You can see it print Arial font all over the web page. Now, if we need to change the font family, then we don't need to change it multiple times. Now, let's change the font family all over the web page. And I'm going to use Vardhana font. If I save this file and reload my browser, you can see the font style. As you can see, it replaced Arial font with Vardhana font. So now it's clear for you what is the use case of variable in Sass. It not only saves our time, it's also enhances our productivity. We can change thousands of places by changing one place. So thanks for watching this video. Stay tuned for our next tutorial. Hello guys, welcome back. Once again, I am back with a new tutorial related Sass. And in this tutorial, we are going to learn Sass nesting. Here you can see three different selectors. As you can see in our first selector, I use nav tag with ul tag. And in our second selector, I use nav tag with li tag. And in our last selector, we use nav tag with anchor tag. And what is the common thing among these three? Which is nav tag. So as you can see, if we use CSS syntax, then we need to use nav tag 3 times. But if we type the same code in Sass, then we need to type like this. And we call this method nesting. Here you can see, at first we start nav tag. Then inside the curly braces, we style all these selectors. ul selector, li selector, anchor selector. So if we use nesting, then we don't need to type nav keyword 3 times. And inside the curly braces, we need to select all other selectors, which is related to nav tag. But when we save the Sass file, it's going to return this kind of CSS code. So it's going to reduce some line of code, but it's going to return the same result. So finally, without wasting your time, let's start the practical and see how it's work. So here you can see, side by side, I open my Visual Studio Code Editor and my browser. And I already create a basic web layout. And in my Visual Studio Code Editor, you can see I open total 3 files. Our HTML document, our Sass file, and our CSS file. And you know, I used this layout in our previous tutorial. You can see the variables which I create in our previous tutorial. But in this tutorial, we are going to learn how can we use nesting. But at first, we need to find the position that where we can use nesting. So I'm going to scroll down a little bit. Here you can see top bar selector. And as you can see, after top bar selector, we use top bar with ul, li, anchor tag, and hover. So this is the right place to use nesting method. So at first, I'm going to copy the ul CSS. Copy. And then I'm going to paste it inside the top bar selector. Because top bar is the common tag for all of them. Now, this selector is not necessary, so I'm going to remove it. And next you can see inside the ul tag there is li tag. As you can see, I already used the ul tag inside the top bar section. So now I'm going to copy only the li selector from this position to this position. Copy. And I'm going to paste it inside the ul tag. So at first our top bar selector, and inside the top bar selector I put ul selector, and then inside the ul selector I put li selector. Now I don't need this CSS selector, so I'm going to remove it. And now you can see inside the top bar selector we have anchor tag. So now I'm going to copy the anchor tag selector only. And I'm going to paste it outside the ul tag. So I'm going to remove this code. I don't need this now. And now you can see a hover selector. It's a anchor hover selector, not the top bar hover selector. So I'm going to copy this hover selector and I'm going to use it inside the anchor tag in that position. And I'm going to remove this one. And now I want to tell you a new thing. As you can see, inside the anchor tag, we create anchor hover tag. So it is not necessary to use anchor tag again. So we can remove anchor tag. So here we can use $sign, something like that. It's mean we use this hover effect with the parent tag. So it's going to create the hover tag of his parent tag. So if I save this file and refresh my browser, here you can see there is no changes. It's worked as it is. So we call this method nesting. Similarly, we are going to follow the same process for header section. So I'm going to copy the h1 tag and I'm going to paste it inside the header tag. and I'm going to remove this one. And also I'm going to follow the same process for menu section. So at first I'm going to copy the UL part of this menu and paste it inside the menu section. And I'm going to remove old one. And then I'm going to copy the LI part of this menu and I'm going to paste it inside the menu section. And then I'm going to remove this one. Our next selector is anchor selector, which is inside the LI selector. So I'm going to copy the anchor tag and I'm going to paste it inside the LI tag. And then I'm going to remove this one. And our next selector is anchor hover tag. So I'm going to copy this selector. So as you can see, it's the anchor hover tag, so we need to paste it inside the anchor tag. And then we need to remove the A tag and we can use & here. So for now, this one is useless, so I want to remove it. So basically, it's create our CSS code very manageable. If I save this file and reload my browser, as you can see, there is no changes. And now we don't need to use this menu selector multiple times. And next, I'm going to follow the nesting process for our content section. So at first, I'm going to copy the H2 selector. And then I want to paste it inside the content section. And I'm going to remove this one. And next, you can see a pseudo selector named selection. And you can see we use this selection all of the content section. So I'm going to copy only the pseudo selector. And I'm going to paste it inside the content section, not the H2 section. And then I'm going to remove it. And as you know, for pseudo selector, we need to use &sign. So I'm going to type & here. If I save this file and reload my browser, you can see there is no changes. I hope now it's clear for you what is nesting and how we can use nesting. So thanks for watching this video. Stay tuned for our next tutorial. Hello guys, good to see you back. Once again, I am back with a new tutorial related Sass. And in this tutorial, we are going to learn what is partial and imports. So at first, let's focus on partial. Partial means parts. I want to say parts of Sass file. Suppose we have a Sass file and our file name is main.sass file, and this is our main file. And as you know, if we create a website, our website divided by header, content, sidebar and footer. And sometimes we need to create different designs for different pages. But the problem is when we type all the code in a single file, it creates our file very heavy and messy. We need to scroll up and down our page multiple times. So to solve this kind of problem, we part our layout. For header, we create header file. For content, we create a different file. For sidebar and for footer. And if we work with variables, also we create another file for variables. So basically, it's organize our code and reduce the clumsiness. Suppose we complete the header section style, then we don't need to open it again. We can open the specify part where we need to change. So this is the concept of partial. Now talk about imports. After creating the different parts, we need to import these parts in our main file. And for that, we need to use a special keyword, import. @import, we need to type the file name, header. One important thing you need to remember. You need to create the same extension file. I want to say Sass file, not CSS file. You cannot import CSS file in the main file. Obviously, you need to create Sass file. And another thing you need to remember, when you create your separate file, you need to use underscore before. I want to say underscore header.scss. Our underscore sign recognize this is not the main file. So our Sass compiler successfully identify this is a partial file. And we need to include it in our main file. That's why we don't need a separate CSS file for partial files. And if you use SASS syntax, then for your partial file, also you need to use SASS syntax. So without wasting your time, let's start the practical and see how we can use partial and imports. As you can see, I already opened my Koala application. And I open our CSS folder in this application. With that, I also open Visual Studio Code Editor. As you can see, this is our main Sass file, style.scss. And now I'm going to divide this file with parts. At first, I'm going to start with these variables. I want to create a separate Sass file for our variables. So at first, I'm going to create a new file in our CSS folder. And our file name is variables. And as I told you earlier, to create a partial file, we need to use underscore sign, underscore variables, dot our extension SCSS. And then I'm going to press enter. As you can see, it's created our file. And then I'm going to cut my variables from this file. And I'm going to paste it inside the variable file. And I'm going to remove it from our main file. So at first, I'm going to save this file. Then we need to include this file in our style file. For that, first we need to type @sign. And then we need to type import. Import, inside the double quotes, we need to type the file name. But we don't need to use underscore sign. Just we need to type variables. You don't need to mention file extension. Our compiler is smart enough to understand the file extension. And then you need to use semicolon to end this line. And next, I'm going to create a new file for our header section. So I'm going to type underscore header dot SCSS. And then I'm going to press enter. As you can see, it created a new file. And now I want to separate our header section. For that, I'm going to select from the top bar. From top bar section, I want to copy our header, also the menu. And I'm going to cut and I'm going to paste it inside the header file. That's it. So for our header part, we select top bar, header section, also the menu section. And then we need to import the file in our main file, which is style.scss. So I'm going to type @import. Then inside the double quotes, we need to type the file name, which is header. Then semicolon to end this line. Now for our content section, I'm going to create another file. So inside the CSS folder, I'm going to create underscore content dot SCSS. And then I'm going to press enter. As you can see, it created a new file. Then I back to my style.scss file and I'm going to cut this content part. And I'm going to paste it inside the content.scss file. And I'm going to save this file also. In the similar way, we need to import this file in our main file. So I'm going to duplicate this line and here I'm going to type content. And next, we need to create a file for our sidebar section. So I'm going to create a new file in our CSS folder. Underscore sidebar dot SCSS. So as you can see, we create a new file for our sidebar. And then we need to cut the sidebar section from the style.css file. So I'm going to cut the sidebar section from this file. And I'm going to paste it inside the sidebar file. And then I'm going to save this file. And now we need to import this file in our style file. So I'm going to duplicate this line. And here I'm going to type sidebar. And at last, I'm going to create a new file for our footer section. So inside the CSS folder, once again, I'm going to create a new file. Underscore footer dot SCSS. And in this file, I want to style our footer part. So I'm going to cut this part and paste it inside the footer section. And then I'm going to save this file. And also I'm going to back to our main file, style.sass file. And now we need to import the footer section in our main file. So I'm going to duplicate this line and here I'm going to type footer. And I'm going to save this file. And at last, you can see the media query section. We use it for responsive purpose. And if you want to separate this part, yes, you can. So let's create another file for media query section. So inside the CSS folder, I'm going to create another folder. I'm going to create a file, underscore media dot SCSS. And then I'm going to press enter. And then I'm going to cut the media query section and I'm going to paste it inside this media file. And I'm going to save this one. And as you know, we need to import this file in our main file. So I'm going to duplicate this line. And here I'm going to type our file name, which is media. And I'm going to press Ctrl S to save this file. So using partial technique, we successfully separate our web layout. We separate our header section, content section, sidebar section, footer section, also the media queries and the variables. So it's reduced clumsiness of our website. If I open my HTML file, let me show you. As you can see, this is our HTML layout. Let's reload the file. As you can see, there is no changes. It's look as it is. Now, suppose you want to change the header and footer background color. In that case, you need to open variables file. And from here, you can change your main color. I want some green color, something like that. If I save this file and then back to the browser and reload my browser, here you can see the result. It changed our main color. And if I show you my CSS file, let me show you style.css. Here you can see it follows the sequence of our import files. At first stop bar, then come header, then come content, and then come sidebar, at last footer, and then our media query. And after media query, as you can see, our body selector and our wrapper selector. And if I show you the style.sass file, you can follow the sequence. First our variables, header, content, sidebar, footer, media query, and as you can see our body section and our wrapper section. So I hope now it's clear for you what is partial and imports. So thanks for watching this video. Stay tuned for our next tutorial. Hello guys, good to see you back. In this tutorial, we are going to learn a new feature related Sass. In this tutorial, we are going to learn Mixins. It's a very useful feature. Suppose we have two different classes, class 1 and class 2. And as you can see, I use border radius property both of the classes. For class 1, I use 5 pixel border radius, and for class 2, I use 10 pixel border radius. So you can see I use similar property both the classes. Their property is same, but their value is different. For our old Chrome browser, we use border radius with WebKit, and for our old Mozilla browsers, we use border radius with Moz. So it's a simple CSS method. But the problem is, if we need to use the similar properties 10 times, then what? Then we need to type 30 lines of code. So to solve this kind of problem, Sass introduced Mixins. Mixins basically work as like functions. If you had knowledge of JavaScript, then you already familiar with functions. Let me clear this concept. I am going to show you an example. If you want to create Mixin in Sass, at first you need to type @Mixins. And then you need to take Mixin name. You can take any name. In our case, BD radius. Just you need to remember, do not provide any space in this name. And then you need to take round braces. And it's completely optional. If you want to take any parameter, then you need to pass the variable name. As you can see, in our case, value. And then we need to use this 3 property inside this Mixin. And also you can pass the parameter with this property. So in this way, we can create our Mixin function. Now the question is, how we can use this Mixin function in our CSS code. Let me show you. For that, I'm going to use class 1. And if I want to use this Mixin, we need to type @include, then our Mixin's name, border radius. And inside the parenthesis, we need to pass the border radius value as like function. So when I call this Mixin function, then we need to pass a value as a parameter. And then we can use this parameter as a value. Value for 3 different property. So without wasting your time, let's start the practical and try to understand how we can use Mixins. So as you can see, side by side I open my Visual Studio Code Editor and my browser. And I already create a new HTML document. And here you can see in my browser, we already create 3 different div for this example. And also we set 3 different ID for this 3 div. For our first div, we set first. For our second, we set second. And for our last div, we set third. And also I link our CSS file with this document. So let's jump into our Sass file and try to explore how mixin works. So at first, I want to set border radius all of this 3D. For that, I'm going to use mixin method. So let's create a mixin. @mixin. Then after mixin keyword, we need to take the mixin name, and our mixin name is bd-radius. And then we need to use parentheses for our parameters. It is pretty similar with JavaScript function. And then inside the curly braces, I'm going to set our first property, and our first property name is -webkit-border radius. And for now, I'm going to set border radius 5 pixels. And I'm going to duplicate this line 2 times. At first, I use prefix for our old Chrome browser, and then I'm going to use prefix for Mozilla browser. So I'm going to type Moz here. And at last, I'm going to use the exact property, border radius. Now, our mixin is ready to use. And remember, we do not use any parameter in this mixin function, because for now, I do not want to pass any value as a parameter. So at first, I'm going to use this mixin function in our first div. For that, first we need to type include keyword, @include. After include keyword, we need to type the mixin name, and our mixin name is bd-radius. Then parenthesis, and semicolon to end this line. Remember, if you want to call this mixin function, always you need to use @include keyword. Now, if I save this file and reload my browser, you can see the result. You can see the border radius in our first div. And now, I'm going to call the same mixin function in our second and third div. If I save this file and reload my browser, you can see the same result, all of these 3 divs. And now I want 3 different border radius for these 3 divs. And now I want 3 different border radius for these 3 divs. Suppose for our first div, I want 5 pixel border radius. For our second div, I want 10 pixel border radius. And for our third div, I want 15 pixel border radius. In that case, we need to use parameter in our mixin function. So we need to set a variable name as a parameter. For that, we need to use $sign. Dollar, and our variable name is value. And then I'm going to copy this value, and I'm going to use it as a property value. Something like that. And now we need to pass the value when we call the mixin function. So for our first div, I'm going to set 5 pixel. Similarly, for our second div, I want to use 10 pixel border radius. 10 pixel. And for our last div, I want to use 15 pixel border radius. If I save this file and reload my browser, you can see the result. So as you can see, we successfully set 3 different border radius for this 3 divs. So this is the use case of mixin function in Sass. I hope now it's clear for you. So thanks for watching this video. Stay tuned for our next tutorial. Hello guys, good to see you back. This is another tutorial related Sass. And in this tutorial, you are going to learn a very useful feature, which is extend. Suppose we have a class named class1. And as you can see, we use total 4 property in this class: color, font size, padding, and line height. With that, we have another class. And our class name is class2. As you can see, in our class1, we use red color. And in our class2, we use orange color. Here you can see, without color property, every property and their value are same. Their font size, their padding, and their line height. Everything is same. Now, suppose we have another class, class3. Similarly, without color, every properties are same. Their font size, their padding, and their line height. So, we repeat their property and their value 2 times. I want to say, we need to type 6 extra line for that. So, to handle this kind of situation, Sass introduced a new method, which is extend. So, when we need to work with Sass file, at first, we need to create class1 as it is. But, when we create our class2, at first, we need to override the color property because I do not want to repeat this red color for this div. That's why I override this color. And next, you need to use the extend keyword, @extend. and I want to extend this class with class 1 property. That's why I type class 1. You can extend with class ID whatever you want. Similarly, for our third class, just we need to override the color green, and then we need to follow the similar process. @extend our class 1. It's mean I want to use class 1 property in class 3. So without wasting your time, let's start the practical and try to understand how we can use extend method. As you can see, side by side I open my Visual Studio Code Editor and my browser using Live Server extension. And I also open our Koala application. As you can see, we have total 3 different div with their different background color and their different size. And for this 3 div, we use 3 different ID, first, second and third. And this is our CSS file, style.css. If I show you my CSS file, here you can see, for our first div, our background color is gray and width is 300 pixel. Similarly, for our second div, we use background color orange and width 400 pixel. And for our third div, we use background color red and width 600 pixel. Without these 2 property, every property and their value is same. You can notice it. Padding 15 pixel, border radius 10 pixel, font family Arial, font size 20 pixel. If we follow this regular method, then we need to type 8 extra line. So, to resolve this kind of problem, Sass introduce extend. So let's back to the Sass file. We do not going to change anything in our first div, but in our second div, I'm going to use extend method. Let me show you. At first, I'm going to delete this 4 line. Padding, border radius and font family and font size. Then I'm going to use the keyword @extend. And now I want to extend this second ID with first ID. So here we need to type #first, then semicolon to end this line. If I save this file, here you can see there is no changes. It's worked perfectly. And next, I'm going to follow the similar process for our third div. So I'm going to remove these properties. And I'm going to extend @extend. And I want to extend our third div with our first div. #first, then semicolon to end this line. If I save this file, you can see there is no changes in our browser. So we successfully extend our first ID. But if I show you my CSS file, let me show you. Here you can see it create a combination of ID selector, first, second and third. And also you can see 2 different IDs, second and third. It is just used for override the background color and div width, 400 pixel, 600 pixel, background red and background orange. So as you can see, it's very useful. If you notice, you can see it's pretty similar with Mixins. But there is a difference between Mixins and extend. So what is the difference? The first difference is we can pass a value as a parameter in Mixins, but we cannot pass a value as a parameter in extend. And the second difference is we can use combine selector in extend. But inside the Mixins, we cannot use combine selector. And now I'm going to show you the another method, how we can use extend. So you already know the process, how we can use the extend. At first, we need to create a class, and then using this class, we can extend this class with other class. And you know the process. Suppose now you decide you don't want to show class 1 in your CSS file, but you want to use their property in class 2 and class 3. In that case, you need to use %sign before the class name. Now the class 1 is reusable, similar to Mixins. And we call this method placeholder. Now the placeholder do not going to reflect in your CSS file. And if you want to extend your property with this placeholder, then you need to use @extend, %sign and the class name. Just you need to remember placeholder and extend work together. So let me show you the actual demonstration. So once again, I am back to my Visual Studio Code Editor. So at first, I am going to create a placeholder. So I am going to remove this hashtag. And then I'm going to use %sign. Now we transform our first ID into a placeholder. And I'm going to use this placeholder in our second div. And if you want to use placeholder with the extend, then you need to use %sign. Now our second div extend with this placeholder. Also, I want to extend our third div with this placeholder. So I'm going to use %sign here. I do not save this file. If I save this file, first it's going to destroy these div properties because we transform our first ID into a placeholder. And as I told you earlier, our placeholder do not going to reflect in our CSS file. So if I save this file, you can see the result. First, it destroy our first div, but it maintained the previous property for second div and third div. And if I show you my CSS file, here you can see the result. Here you can see there is no selector named ID first. You can see only two selector, ID second and ID third. First it create a combination using second ID and third ID, and then it create second ID selector and third ID selector to override background color and width. So using placeholder, we can create a reusable code and we can use it multiple times. So I hope now it's clear for you what is extend and placeholder. In the next tutorial, we are going to learn Sass operators. So thanks for watching this video. Stay tuned for our next tutorial. Hello guys, good to see you back. This is another tutorial related to Sass. And in this tutorial, we are going to learn Sass operators. Here you can see we have total 5 different operators. Our first operator name is equality operator. Then come relational operator, numeric operator, string operator and boolean operator. And in this tutorial, we are going to learn equality operator, relational operator and boolean operator. But at first, let's try to understand what is the meaning of operators. At first, I'm going to talk about equality operator and relational operator. As you can see in our equality operator, we have two types of operator, double equal to operator and not equal to operator. In our equal to operator, we need to use equal sign 2 times. But in our not equal to operator, first we need to use exclamation sign, then we need to use equal sign. It means not equal. Using equal to operator, we can compare values. Suppose our first value is 5. 5 equal to 5. Then it's going to return true, because both the value are same. Similarly, if we use not equal to sign, also it's going to return true or false value according to the comparison. So this is the use case of equality operator. We are going to learn more about it in our practicals. On the other hand, we have relational operators. And it's come with 4 different operators. Less than operator, greater than operator, less than equal to operator, greater than equal to operator. So all of this equality operator and relational operator use with if condition. And in Sass, we call it if function. In our upcoming tutorials, we are going to learn about it. So in this tutorial, we are going to learn how can we use conditions with that. So without wasting your time, let's start the practical. Here you can see I already put my CSS folder in this Sass Koala compiler. And also you can see I open our Sass file and our CSS file side by side. And here you can see a class selector, class 1. And now I'm going to start this practical with equality operator. Let me show you. So at first, I'm going to take a CSS property, which is padding. Padding 10 pixel equal to 10 pixel. Here I'm going to compare two values. If I save this file, here you can see in our CSS file, it's written padding true. Here we match 10 pixel equal with 10 pixel. And when I save this file, it's written true. Yes, the condition is true. But we do not use this operator like that. If you're familiar with JavaScript, then you know that. If you know JavaScript, then you're already familiar with if condition. And we are going to learn about it in our upcoming tutorials. And here, I just tell you how can we use comparison operators. Here you can see we compare 10 pixel with 10 pixel. But if I change the value 10 pixel to 10 em. If I save this file, now you can see it's written padding false. Because 10 pixel value and 10 em value is not same. Similarly, if I compare with 10 pixel with 15 pixel, let me show you. I'll save this file, it's also written false. Because 15 pixel is greater than 10 pixel. But if I use not equal to operator, let me show you. And then save this file. In that case, it's written true. Because our condition is true. 10 pixel is not equal to 15 pixel. As you can see, here we compare our value with numeric value. But also we can use string value. Let me show you. So here I'm going to type font name Arial. And I'm going to compare with, so I'm going to use equal to sign with Arial. If I save this file, here you can see it's written true because both the fonts are same. But if I use Roboto font, let me show you. I'll save this file, now it's written false. not only string value, we can compare complex value also. Let me show you. So inside the round braces, I'm going to type 4 pixel, 6 pixel, and 2 pixel. And I'm going to copy this line. And I'm going to paste it here. If I save this file, as you can see, it's written true. Because both the value is true. But if I change one value, 7 pixel, and then save this file, now you can see it's written false. But if I use not equal to sign, and then save this file, now it's written true. Because both the conditions are not similar, that's why it's written true. So this is our equality operators. And now I'm going to show you what is relational operators. Basically, relational operator work with numeric values. We cannot use it with string value. For that, let me show you an example. So I'm going to remove this one, and here I'm going to type 50 greater than 4. I want to say, is number 50 greater than 4? If I save this file, as you can see, it's written true. But if I pass 60 here, and then save this file, as you can see, it's written false. Because in our previous condition, 50 is greater than 4. But in this condition, 50 is not greater than 60. That's why our condition written false. Not only that, we can use this value with unit. Let me show you. 50 pixel and 60 pixel. If I save this file, you can see it's written false. But if I pass 40 pixel here and then save this file, now you can see it's written true. Not only that, you can compare with different unit. Let me show you. Suppose I want to compare with 1000 millisecond greater than equal to 1 second. If I save this file, here you can see it's written true. As you can see, their unit is different, ms and s, but their value is same. That's why it's written true. And here I use greater than equal to relational operator. Using this operator, we can compare if 1000 ms is greater than 1s, in that case it's going to return true. Otherwise, if 1000 ms equal with 1s, in that case it's going to return true. But if I pass 2 seconds here and then save this file, as you can see, it's written false. Because 1000 millisecond is not greater than 2 seconds. So here you can see we can compare two different unit value with same category. We can compare millisecond with hour, minute, microsecond, etc. But if I try to compare ms with pixel, let me show you 1000 ms greater than 2 pixel. And then if I save this file, now you can see it's written error. Because their category is different. We cannot compare time with area. That's why we need to use the same category. Now let's talk about the Boolean operators and how we can use it. In Sass, we have total 3 types of Boolean operator: and, or, not. And it's always written true or false result. And we can use all this Boolean operator with multiple conditions. I want to say, if you want to check more than one condition, you can use these operators. We use AND operator if both the conditions are true, then written true, else it's written false. Not only 2 conditions, you can add more condition with this operator. Let me show you the example. Suppose this is condition 1 and I use AND operator. And this is condition 2. In our condition 1, 5 pixel equal to 5 pixel. It means the condition is true. And in our second condition, Arial font equal to Arial font. Here we compare to numeric value and here we compare to string value. As you can see, both the conditions are true. In that case, it's going to return true result. And if any of condition do not return true, in that case, it's going to return false. Next, let's talk about OR Boolean operator. If one of the condition is true, then it's written true. Otherwise, it's written false. Suppose we have 2 conditions, condition 1 and condition 2. In our condition 1, I compare 5 pixel with 15 pixel. And in our condition 2, we compare Arial font with Arial font. In that case, you know one of the condition is true, Arial font equal with Arial font. Because one of the condition is true, that's why it's written true. And if both the condition return fails, in that case it's going to return fails. And our last operator is not operator. It's always return opposite value. If the answer is true, it's going to return false answer. And if the answer was false, it's going to return true answer. Basically, it's return opposite answer. So, without wasting your time, let's start the practical and see how it's work. So, as you can see, once again I am back to my Visual Studio code editor. And now I'm going to use a condition with Boolean operator. At first, I'm going to use this condition, 1000 milliseconds greater than equal to 1 second. It means it's going to return true result. As you can see, it's written true. With that, I'm going to use AND operator. And 5 pixel equal to 5 pixel. If I save this file, as you can see, it's written true. Because both the conditions are true. But if I false one condition, so I want to change 5 pixel equal to 6 pixel and then save this file. Now it's written false. Now both the condition is not true. Our first condition is true, but our second condition is fails. That's why it's written fails. Because we used AND operator. But if I used OR operator, then what? So now I'm going to use OR operator. OR. If I save this file, it's going to return true. Because as you know, if one of the condition is true, then it's going to return true. And if both the condition is fails, let me show you. So I'm going to change 2 seconds and then save this file. As you can see, it's written fails. And if both the condition is true in OR operator, in that case, once again, and 5 pixel, and then save this file, as you can see, it's written true. So, in OR operator, if both the condition or one of the condition is true, in that case, it's going to return true. And now I'm going to show you the last Boolean operator, which is not operable, and how we can use it. So at first, I'm going to duplicate this line, and I'm going to comment out our previous one. So here, I'm going to use not operator. So I'm going to remove this condition, and first, I'm going to type not. As you know, not operator always return opposite result. So 5 pixel equal to 5 pixel. As you know, the condition is true. If I save this file, here you can see it's written false. Because it's written always opposite result. But if the condition is false, and if I use not equal to operator, 5 pixel not equal to 5 pixel, and save this file, now it's written true. Because the condition is false, that's why it's written true. It's always written opposite result. I hope now it's clear for you what is Boolean operators. So thanks for watching this video. Stay tuned for our upcoming tutorials. Hello guys, good to see you back. This is the another tutorial related Sass operator. And in this tutorial, we are going to learn Sass numeric operator and Sass string operator. As I told you in my previous tutorial, we have total 5 different operators in Sass. Equality operator, relational operator, numeric operator, string operator, and Boolean operator. And we already covered equality operator, relational operator, and Boolean operator in our previous tutorial. And in this tutorial, we are going to cover numeric operator and string operator. So let's get started. At first, I'm going to talk about string operator. String operator means concatenation operator. And we define this operator using plus sign. We use this operator to add a string with another string. Using this operator, we can join two different strings. Not only that, we can join numeric value with string value. Not only that, using this operator, we can join numeric value with string value. If you are familiar with JavaScript, you already know that. Let me show you an example. Here you can see 50 plus px. Here we want to join a string value with a numeric value. As a result, it returns 50 pixel. On the other hand, we have numeric operators: addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, modulus, otherwise we call it remainder. We use this operator for arithmetic calculations. So let's start the practical and try to understand how we can use it. As you can see, I already opened my Sass compiler software, Koala. And also you can see in my Visual Studio Code Editor, side by side, I opened my Sass file and my CSS file. So at first, I'm going to show you how we can use string operators. So for that, I'm going to create two variables, $var, colon, and I'm going to take 50 as value. Then I'm going to duplicate this line and this is var2. And here I am going to take 5. So this is variable 1 and this is variable 2. So now I'm going to style a class dot class 1. Then inside the curly braces, I'm going to take any CSS property. Suppose margin. For value, I'm going to use variable 1, var1, var1. Next, I'm going to use concatenation sign. After concatenation sign, I'm going to pass px. Here you can see our var1 return numeric value, and I want to concatenate var1 with string value px. So if I save this file, as you can see, it's written margin 50 pixel. So here we join two different type of value using string operator, and we call this method concatenation. With that, I'm going to show you how can we use numeric operators. So with var1, I want to add var2, $var2. After var2, once again I'm going to use concatenate sign. Now this sign between var1 and var2, it is not a concatenation sign. This is addition sign. But this sign going to act as a concatenation sign. So if I save this file, here you can see our margin is 55 pixel. So as you know, using addition operator we can add two values. But now I'm going to use subtraction operator minus. If I save this file, now you can see our new margin is 45 pixel. It's reduced 5 pixel from 50 pixel. That's why it's written 45 pixel. This is the use case of subtraction operator, and in that way we can use it. Similarly, we can use multiplication sign. If I save this file, you can see the result, 250 pixel. And if I use division sign and then save this file, now you can see the answer is 10 pixel. And now I'm going to use our last operator, which is modulus. Let me show you how. If we use modulus sign, then it will give you the remainder after division. If I save this file, as you can see there is no remainder, that's why it returned 0 pixel. But if I change the var1 value 54 and then save this file, now you can see the remainder is 4. So this is the use case of modulus operator. So basically we do not use this numeric operator in that way. We use it when we create complex designs. Let me show you. So for this example, I'm going to take a new property, which is font size. Font size, and I'm going to use var1. Concatenate with pixel. If I save this file, you can see the result. Class 1 font size is 54 pixel. But for our heading 1 tag, I want font size 2 times then class 1. Let me show you. Font size $var1 multiply with 2. Concatenate pixel. If I save this file, you can see the result. Now our heading 1 font size is 108 pixel. Because I want to show 2 times font size, then class 1, then class 1. That's why I use multiplication operator. So in our class 1, it's written 54 pixel, and in our heading 1, it's written 108 pixel. So in that way, we use variables and numeric operator together. And most of the time, we use it with if condition, otherwise loops. And we are going to learn about it in our upcoming tutorials. So this is it for this tutorial. In the next tutorial, we are going to learn a new concept related stream, which is interpolation. So stay tuned for our next tutorial. Thanks for watching this video. Hello guys, good to see you back. Once again I am back with a new tutorial related Sass. And in this tutorial, we are going to learn interpolation, Sass interpolation. In our previous tutorial, we learned string operators. With that, we learned string concatenation operators. Using string concatenation, we can add string value with numeric value, as you can see the result. Here you can see it. As you can see here, 50 concatenate with pixel, and as a result, it returned 50 pixel. But the problem is, we cannot use concatenate sign in CSS properties. We can only use it in CSS values. Also, we cannot use concatenation sign in CSS selector. Let me show you an example. Here you can see I take a property named margin hyphen concatenation sign, and I call a variable named position. You can put any value here, left, top, right. I want to say, suppose margin top 20 pixel. But we cannot use concatenation sign in that place. Let me show you another example with selector. Suppose there is a class named image. .image hyphen concatenate with image name. But we cannot use concatenation sign in our selector or a properties. We can use concatenation only in our values. But for this kind of concatenation, Sass introduce interpolation. If you want to concatenate with properties, otherwise classes, in that case, we need to use interpolation method. And we need to use this sign, hashtag and curly braces. Inside the curly braces, we need to put the variable name. And then we can concatenate our properties and classes. Let me show you the example. If you want to concatenate these properties and the class, in that case, then we need to type like this, margin hyphen hashtag inside the curly braces, we need to pass the variable name, position. This is for property. Similarly, for a class, we need to follow the same method. After hashtag, we need to use curly braces, and then inside the curly braces, we need to pass the variable name. So without wasting your time, let's start the practical and see how we can use it. As you can see, I already opened my Koala application. And in my Visual Studio Code Editor, side by side, I open Sass file and our CSS file. So let's start the practical and see how we can use interpolation. So at first, I'm going to declare a mixin, @mixin. And our mixin name is margin. And inside this parenthesis, I want to pass two parameters. Our first variable name is position. And our second variable name is unit. And also, I'm going to call the mixin in our class. Let me show you. So I'm going to select a class, .class1. Inside the curly braces, I'm going to include the mixin. @include, and our mixin name is margin. At first, I'm going to pass position value. Our position is left. After position, we need to pass the unit. And here I'm going to pass 20, and then semicolon to end this line. Now, inside this mixin, I'm going to take our CSS property, which is margin. Margin hyphen, here I'm going to use the interpolation method. Hashtag curly braces. Now I want to concatenate margin with another variable. And here I'm going to pass position variable. Position. As you can see, in our position variable, we pass left value. And then, after column, for value, I'm going to use unit variable. $unit. And I want to concatenate with pixel value, px. Then semicolon to end this line. So if I save this file, as you can see, in my CSS file, it's print margin left 20 pixel. So now we can change the position just typing the name. Suppose I'm going to pass top. And here I'm going to pass 40. If I save this file, now you can see margin top 40 pixel. So here you can see we use a mixin called margin. And inside this mixin, we use interpolation method. And we pass value from this mixin and we concatenate with CSS property. And also we concatenate string with unit. So this is the use case of interpolation. In this example, we use interpolation with CSS property. And now I'm going to use interpolation with CSS selector. For that, I'm going to create another mixin. @mixin, and our mixin name is setImage. set-img. Then inside the curly braces and inside this parenthesis, I want to pass one parameter. And our parameter name is $name. Now inside the curly braces, I want to concatenate our selector. .image dash hashtag inside the curly braces, I'm going to call the image name. So here we use interpolation to concatenate our selector. Then inside the curly braces, I'm going to use a CSS property, which is background image. Background image, and I'm going to use URL value for the background image. URL, inside the parenthesis, inside the double quotes, we need to pass the file location. And our file location is image / our image name. Also, here we can use interpolation method to take image name. Let me show you. Hashtag inside the curly braces, I'm going to pass the variable, which is name. After image name, we need to pass the image extension, and our extension is JPG. And now we need to call this mixin, and we need to pass the image name. To call the mixin, we need to type @include. Then we need to pass the mixin name, setImage. And also we need to pass the image name. Suppose our image name is cloud and then semicolon 2 in this line. If I save this file, as you can see, first it creates a CSS selector image dash cloud and then it creates the image name cloud.jpg. So using interpolation, we can concatenate CSS selector and also we can use it as an image name because we cannot use plus sign to concatenate CSS selector and CSS properties. That's why Sass introduced CSS interpolation. I hope now it's clear for you. Thanks for watching this video. Stay tuned for our next tutorial. Hello guys, good to see you back. Once again I'm back with a new tutorial related Sass. In this tutorial, we are going to learn Sass functions. If you are already familiar with JavaScript, then you know what is function. So let me show you how we can create functions in Sass. To create a function in Sass, first you need to take a keyword @function, then your function name. Remember, do not provide any space between the name. You can use dash, otherwise underscore sign, but do not provide any space. Then inside the parenthesis, you can take one parameter, multiple parameter, otherwise no parameter. It is up to you. For this example, I took one parameter, means one variable, and our variable name is value. And then you need to use curly braces. If you remember, function and mixins are pretty similar, but there is a difference. Basically, function can return a value. It can return arithmetic calculations, but mixin doesn't. But mixins always print what was already written in mixin. But functions return values, and we can use this value in our upcoming codes. Suppose I create a class named 1/3, and inside this selector, as you can see, I use a property named width, and we call our function and we pass a value 1200. Then our function going to divide this value with 3 and return 400, and then it concatenate the number with pixel, and in our CSS it pass with 400 pixel. Let me show you a scenario that can clear your doubts. Suppose we have a parent container and its width is 1200 pixel, and now I want to divide this width into 3 parts. In that case, every cell take 400 pixels. For that, we can create a function which can divide our container into 3 parts. If we change the width of this container, it automatically divide our container into 3 parts. Similarly, if we want to divide this container into a 2 part, in that case, we need to create a function which can divide our value into a 2 part. Suppose in future you want to change the outer div width, something 1500 pixel. In that case, our function going to divide the container with equal size, 500 pixel, 500 pixel and 500 pixel. So this is the use case of function. So we don't need to type the cells width manually. We are going to calculate it using the help of function. So let's start the practical and see how we can use it. So once again, I am back to my Visual Studio Code editor. Side by side, I open style.sass file and style.css file. At first, I'm going to set a container width. For that, I'm going to take a variable. And our variable name is con-width, and for our container width, I'm going to take 1000. For now, I'm not going to take any unit like pixel, em, etc. And now, I'm going to create a function which is going to divide my container width into 3 parts. So, to create a function, I'm going to type @function. And our function name is 1/3, 1-3rd. Then inside the parenthesis, user going to pass a parameter. For this parameter, I'm going to take a variable, $width. Then inside the curly braces, whatever user going to pass, I want to divide it into 3 parts. So for that, I'm going to use return keyword, @return. Then $width divided by 3. Because I want to equally divide the container width into 3 parts. And then I'm going to use concatenate side plus px. This is for unit. Because as a result, I want to return pixel unit. So we successfully create our function and our function name is 1/3. And now I want to call this function. To call the function, we need to style a class. And our class name is 1/3 width. Then inside the curly braces, I'm going to call a property and our property name is width. Width. Now I'm going to call our function and our function name is 1/3. 1/3. Then inside this parenthesis, I'm going to pass this variable. Before I save this file, let me change the container width. I'm going to replace 1000 with 1200. If I save this file, as you can see, our 1/3 container width is 400 pixel. So in future, if I change the container width, 1200 pixel to 500 pixel and then set this file, here you can see it's always written the 1/3 of this container width, which is 500 pixel. So this is the use case of function. Similarly, if you want to divide your container width into two parts, in that case, you need to create another function. So I'm going to duplicate this function and I'm going to change the function name. And our function name is half. But this time we need to divide the container width into two parts. So I'm going to divide with 2. And also I'm going to create a selector for that. Let me show you. Our selector class name is half-width. Half-width. Inside the curly braces, I'm going to call the width property. And as a value, I'm going to call our new function. And our new function name is half. And inside the parenthesis, here I'm going to pass our container width variable. Container width. And also I'm going to change the container width 1500 pixel to 1200 pixel. If I save this file, you can see the result. Here you can see our half function divide our container into two parts and return 600 pixel for one part. And our 1/3 function divide our container into three parts and each of the part took 400 pixel. So now it's clear for you how we can use functions for arithmetic calculations. So in the next tutorial, we are going to learn Sass inbuilt functions. So thanks for watching this video. Stay tuned for our next tutorial. Hello guys, good to see you back. This is the another tutorial related Sass. And in this tutorial, we are going to learn Sass number functions. Here you can see Sass come with total 6 inbuilt function. Numbers function, string function, color function, list function, selector function, and last one is Introspection. And in this tutorial, we are going to learn only number functions. So let's see how many number function we have in Sass. As you can see, we have total 11 number function in Sass. And we are going to cover all of these in this tutorial. So let's start the practical with AVS function. Basically, AVS function return absolute value. Let's start the practical. As you can see, I already opened my Visual Studio Code editor and side by side I open style.sass file and style.css file. So at first I'm going to create a class .class1. Then inside the curly braces, at first I'm going to take a CSS property and I'm going to use padding property. Padding. So our first function is AVS, means absolute function. So here I'm going to type ABS. This function always return absolute value. If I pass a negative value, let me show you, minus 14 pixel. If I set this file, as you can see, it's written absolute value 14 pixel. It's remove the negative value and return 14 pixel. And if I remove the minus sign and then set this file, as you can see, it's always written absolute value. Now let's talk about our next function, which is cell. But before, I'm going to duplicate this line and comment out previous one. Here I'm going to use cell function, CEL. Then inside the round braces, I'm going to pass a floating value. Let me show you. 5.3. What happens if I set this file? Let me show you. If I set this file, as you can see, it's written padding 6. If we use cell function, every time it return above value. If I use 5.9 and set this file, also it return 6. But if I use 5.1 and set this file, also it returns 6. It's always written above value. But if I pass 5.0 and then set this file, now it's written only 5. If we pass float value in cell function, it's always written above value. Similarly, we have opposite function. For that, I'm going to duplicate this line and comment out previous one. And here I'm going to type float function, FLOOR. Then inside the round braces, I'm going to pass 4.7. This function always written below value. If I set this file, as you can see, it's written only 4. Without 0, whatever value we use after dot is going to return only 4. If I pass 9 here, it's also written 4. Let's jump into our next function, which is a round function. So I'm going to duplicate this line and comment out previous one. And here I'm going to type round function. Round. If I set this file, as you can see, it's written 5. This function is combination of cell function and float function. After decimal, if the value is bigger than 4, then it's always written the above value. But after decimal, if the value is lower than 5, then it is going to return below value. Let me show you. If I pass 4.4 here and then save this file, as you can see, now it's written only 4. But if I pass 4.5 and then save this file, now you can see it's written 5. So this is the use case of round function. So I hope now it's clear for you how cell, float and round function work. Our next function is max function. So I want to duplicate this line and comment out previous one. And here I want to call max function. This function always return the maximum value. Suppose if we have 3 value, let me show you 1 pixel, 3 pixel and 5 pixel. If I save this file, as you can see, it's written 5 pixel. It's always written the maximum value from the list. At the same way, we have opposite function, which is min function. So I want to duplicate this line and comment out previous one, and here I want to call our min function. If I save this file, as you can see, it's written the lowest value from this list. It's always written lowest value. Basically, we do not use this function like that. When we need to work with complex arithmetic calculation, then we use this function. Now, let's talk about our next function, which is percentage. So I'm going to duplicate this line and comment out previous one. And here I'm going to type percentage. This function always return the percentage value. If I pass 0.3 and save this file, as you can see, it's written 30%. Also, if we work with arithmetic calculation, let me show you 200 pixel divided by 50 pixel. If I save this file, as you can see, it's written 400%. This function always return percentage. Our next function is comparable. For that, I'm going to duplicate this line and comment out previous one. And here, I'm going to type comparable. Using this function, we can compare two units. If the units are matched, then it's written true, otherwise it's written false. Let me show you the demonstration. So here I'm going to pass 2 pixel, comma, and our next value is 4 pixel. If I save this file, as you can see, it's written true, because their units are same, pixel and pixel. But if I pass em unit and then save this file, em and save this file, as you can see, now it's written false, because their unit is different. That's why we could not compare it. But if I pass centimeter value here, cm, and if I pass mm unit and then save this file, as you can see, now it's written true, because we can compare centimeter with millimeter. That's why it's written true. Let's talk about our next function, which is random. So I'm going to duplicate this line and comment out previous one. So here I'm going to type random. This function always return a random value. If I save this file, as you can see, it's written a random value. If I save this file once again, you can see it's written a different random value. By default, random function return value between 0 to 1. That's why it's written float value. But if I pass a number, something 12, and then save this file, now it's written a number between 0 to 12. It could be any number between 0 to 12. And in our case, it's written 10. If I save this file once again, now you can see it's written 1. Let's talk about our next function, which is unit. For that, I'm going to duplicate this line and comment out previous one. And here I'm going to type unit. For this example, I'm going to pass a number, which is 22. If I save this file, as you can see, it's written only the double quotes, not the number, because we do not pass any unit. But if I pass pixel, px, and then save this file, as you can see, it's written only the unit, pixel. Unit function always return the unit. Similarly, if I pass centimeter, cm, and then save this file, here you can see it's written centimeter. Now, let's talk about our last function, which is unitless. For that, I'm going to duplicate this line and comment out previous one. And here I'm going to type unitless. Basically, this function going to return two values, either true, either false. Basically, this function going to check does we provide unit with this value or not. If I save this file, as you can see, it's written false. Because we provide unit, that's why it's written false. But if I do not provide the unit and save this file, as you can see, now it's written true. We can use this function with if conditions. In the next tutorial, we are going to learn strings related functions. So thanks for watching this video. Stay tuned for our next tutorial. Hello guys, good to see you back. Once again, I'm back with a new tutorial related Sass. And in this tutorial, we are going to learn Sass string function. Here you can see the list of inbuilt function of Sass. In our previous tutorials, we learned about number function. And in this tutorial, we are going to learn string functions. So let's see the string functions. As you can see, we have total 9 string function in Sass. Quote function, to uppercase function, str index function, to lowercase function, str insert function, unique id function, str length function, unquote function, and str slice function. So without wasting your time, let's start the practical. So as you can see, I am in my Visual Studio Code editor, and side by side I open style.sass file and style.css file. So at first I'm going to create a class, and our class name is class1. Then inside the curly braces, I'm going to use a CSS property, and our property name is font family. Font family. But here I'm not going to use the font family name directly. For that, I'm going to use a string function, and our string function name is quote. Quote. Then inside the parentheses, I'm going to call the font family name, and our font family name is Arial. Basically, the quote function going to wrap the string with double quotes. If I save this file, here you can see the result. Font family inside the double quotes Arial. In the opposite way, we have another function, which is unquote. If I use unquote and wrap this font name inside the double quotes and then save this file, as you can see, it removed the quotation from the string. So this is the use case of unquote function. Let's jump into our next function, which is to uppercase. So here I'm going to type to dash uppercase dash case. Basically, this function going to convert the string into uppercase. If I save this file, as you can see, all the letters are in uppercase. At the same way, we have opposite function, which is to lowercase. If I type to lower and then save this file, as you can see, it convert our capital letter A into a small case. Basically, it convert uppercase character into lowercase. Let's jump into our next function, which is string length. So here I want to type our next function, which is str length. Str dash length. Whatever string value we pass inside this string function, it's going to count the character of the string and return the length in number. As you can see, in Arial word, we have total 5 characters. So if I save this file, oops, there is a mistake. Length spelling is not correct. Length. If I save this file, you can see the result. It's written 5. So this is the use case of str length function. Let's talk about our next function, which is string index. So I'm going to call this function string index. Then inside the parentheses, in this function, as a first parameter, we need to pass the string. I already copied a string and I'm going to paste it here. It's a dummy text from lorem ipsum. But at first, let's turn on the word wrap. Using this function, we can search character or word from the string and it's returned index number. So as you can see, as a first parameter, we pass the string. And then in our second parameter, I want to search the dummy word. So inside the double quotes, I'm going to pass dummy. If I save this file, as you can see, it's written 23. It's written the index number of dummy text. If you count the characters, D would be 23. Let me show you another example. Now I want to search lorem word from the string. So I'm going to type lorem. If I save this file, as you can see, it's written 1. Because lorem word start from the first index. That's why it's written 1. And remember, it's also count the space between the words. So this is it for this tutorial. In our upcoming tutorial, I'm going to cover string insert function, unique id function, and string slice function. So thanks for watching this video. Stay tuned for our next tutorial. Hello guys, good to see you back. This is the second part of Sass string functions. And in this tutorial, we are going to learn string insert function, unique ID function, and string slice function. So without wasting your time, let's start the practical. As you can see, inside the Visual Studio Code Editor, I open our previous files, style.sass file and style.css file. Suppose I want to insert a word inside this string. For that, we need to use string insert function. So here I'm going to type string insert. I want to add hello word. So here I'm going to type hello. I want to add hello word beginning of the string. For that, we need to pass another parameter. So here I'm going to type comma, and here I'm going to pass the index number 1. And also I'm going to provide a space in that place. And also I'm going to provide space after O. So if I save this file, you can see the result. Using insert function, we can insert word or a character inside this string. And just we need to pass the index number. That's it. Let me show you once again. Suppose this time I want to add some word in this string. So I copy this word and remove it. And here I'm going to pass the word ipsum. And now I want to insert ipsum word after lorem. For that, I'm going to count exact index number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So here I'm going to pass 7 because also I want to provide a space after lorem. So if I save this file, you can see the result, lorem ipsum. So this is the use case of insert function. Let's talk about our next function. Our next function is string slice. So here I'm going to type str slice. Suppose I want to slice down lorem word from the string. In that case, we need to pass total 2 parameters. Let me show you. In our first parameter, we need to pass our string, and in our second parameter, we need to pass the index number. As you can see, lorem word end in 5th index. So here I'm going to pass 6. If I set this file, now you can see it's remove lorem word and print is simply dummy text. But in our next example, I want to return only is word. In that case, we need to pass total 3 parameters. Our starting index number and our ending index number, which is 9. If I set this file, as you can see, it return is. So using this function, we can slice any section of our string. Let's talk about our last function, which is unique ID. At first, I'm going to remove all of these, and here I'm going to type unique ID dash ID, then our parenthesis, and semicolon to end this line. If I set this file, as you can see, it's written a unique ID. It returns some random characters. If I set this file again, every time it's written a new ID. And by default, always this function return 9 character unique ID. Basically, we use this function with if conditions. So we cover all of these Sass string functions. Thanks for watching this video. Stay tuned for our next tutorial. Hello guys, good to see you back. Once again, I'm back with a new exciting tutorial related Sass. And in this tutorial, we are going to learn Sass color functions. As I told you earlier, Sass came with some inbuilt functions. Number function, string function, colors function, list function, selector function, and introspection function. We complete number function and string function in our previous tutorial. In this tutorial, we are going to learn color function. So without wasting your time, let's see how many color functions we have in our Sass. In this tutorial, we are going to cover these basic but important Sass functions: lighten, darken, adjust hue, saturate, desaturate, mix, and transparentize. I know we have total more than 7 function related color in Sass, but these are the most important one. That's why I'm going to cover these 7 functions. So let's start the practical and see how it's work. Here you can see side by side I open my Visual Studio Code Editor and my browser using Live Server extension. And I already created a HTML document named index.html. With that, I already create style.sass file and style.css file. As you can see in my browser, we have total 2 div, class 1 and class 2. Class 1 filled with pink background color and class 2 came with empty background color. So let's jump into the Sass file and see what we have done. As you can see, at first we create a variable name base color, and our base color is pink. And then we style our divs and set a border. Then in our class 1 we set background color, which is our base color, pink. And we do not set any background color in our class 2. And now I'm going to modify this color, and I want to fill this div with the dark shape of this pink color. For that, I'm going to use a function named darken. So at first, I'm going to use a CSS property, which is background. Background, and I'm going to call our function. So here I'm going to type darken. Then inside the parentheses, we need to provide a color. For color, I'm going to use the same color, which is base color. So I'm going to copy the variable and paste it here. And then in our second parameter, we need to provide the value from 0 to 100%. So here I'm going to pass 30%. So if I save this file, here you can see our container filled with 30% more darker than previous one. And if I show you my style.css file, as you can see, it creates a new color. Then once again, I'm going to back to my style.sass file. So as you can see, if I apply 30% darken color to this base color, it returns this kind of color. Similarly, if I apply 70% and then save this file, you can see the difference. Now it's written more darken color. I show you two divs because this is the original color and this is the darken part of this color. So this is the use case of darken function. Our next function is lighten function. Let me show you. So at first, I'm going to duplicate this line and comment out previous one. And here I'm going to type lighten. And I'm going to pass 30% value here. If I save this file, as you can see, it's written 30% lighten color from our base color. If I show you my CSS file, as you can see, it's written pure white because our pink color is already a lighten color. So if I use blue color, let me show you base color blue. And then save this file. Now you can see the lighten part of this blue color. And if I show you the CSS file, you can see the color code. We can use those functions with hover effects. Let's talk about our next function, which is adjust hue. First, I'm going to duplicate this line and comment out previous one. And here I'm going to type adjust hue dash hue. If I save this file, as you can see, it's changed the color. Basically, using this function, whatever color we pass in our first parameter, it can return darken part or lighten part of this color according to this value. And in our second parameter, we need to pass value with degree. If I pass 20 here and then set this file, you can see the difference. It's written more darken than the previous one. If I pass 70 degree, let's see what happened. If I set this file, it return lighten part of this color. Using hue function, we can rotate colors. So as you can see how we can use hue function. Let's talk about our next function, which is saturate. So at first, I'm going to duplicate this line and comment out previous one. And here I'm going to type saturate. Basically, this function increases the brightness of this color. If I save this file, you can see the result. As you can see, it still returns the same color. Let's change the color. So here I'm going to use a brown color. So I'm going to provide a hexadecimal value. Hash AD4038. If I save this file, now you can see the color difference. This is the base color and this one is 70% saturated than base color. It increased the brightness of this brown color and return red color. Similarly, we have opposite function, which is desaturate. Let me show you. So I'm going to duplicate this line and comment out previous one. And here I'm going to type desaturate. And also I'm going to change the base color, which is blue. If I save this file, as you can see, this function reduces the brightness of this color and return this color. Saturate function always increase the brightness of this color and desaturate function always decrease the brightness of this color. And if we reduce the value 20% and then save this file, now it's tried to match with base color. But if we increase the value 90% and save this file, now you can see the difference. It reduces the brightness of this color. But if I pass 0 value and save this file, now you can see it's written the original color, the base color, blue color. But if I use full value 100% and save this file, now you can see it's written gray color only. So now let's talk about our next function, which is mix. So I'm going to duplicate this line and comment out previous one. So here I'm going to type mix. Using this function, we can mix different colors. In this function, basically we need to pass total 3 parameters. So with base color, I want to add, as you can see our base color is blue. I want to add red color. So here I'm going to type red, comma, and then we need to pass the percentage value. So here I'm going to pass 50%. It's mean how much blue color I want to add with red color. If I save this file, as you can see, it's written purple color. If we mix red color and blue color, in that case, it's written purple color. And if I decrease the percentage value 20% and then save this file, now you can see it's written pink reddish color. It applied 20% base color to this red color. If I increase the value 90% and then save this file, now you can see the different result. Now you can see our new color is much stronger than red color and it's written nearly blue color. So this is the way how you can use mix function. Now let's talk about our last function, which is transparentize. So I'm going to duplicate this line and I'm going to comment out previous one. And here I'm going to type background transparentize. Basically, using this function, we can transparent our color. If you are already familiar with CSS, you know RGBA value. And A stands for alpha value. And we can transparent our color using alpha value. So similarly, we have function in Sass which is transparentize. Here we need to pass total 2 parameters, color and value. For color, I'm going to use our base color. And here we need to pass value between 0 to 1. So here I'm going to type 0.4. It's mean it's 40% transparent. So let's save the file and see is it work properly or not. As you can see, it's 40% transparent our background color. And if I show you my CSS file, here you can see it use RGBA value. And here you can see it's written alpha value 0.6. And if I want to make it complete transparent, in that case we need to pass value 1. If I save this file, now you can see it's completely transparent. But if I show you my CSS file and compare with alpha value, here you can see it's written 0. In CSS, for complete transparent, we need to use 0. But in Sass, for complete transparent, we need to use 1. Obviously, it's work only for this function. So this is it for this tutorial. I hope now it's clear for you what is Sass color functions. So thanks for watching this video. In our upcoming tutorial, we are going to cover Sass list functions. So stay tuned for our next video. Hello guys, good to see you back. Once again, I'm back with a new exciting tutorial related Sass functions. And in this tutorial, we are going to learn Sass list functions. As I told you earlier, we have total 6 functions in Sass: number function, string function, color function, list function, selector function, and introspection function. And in this tutorial, we are going to learn list function. These are all inbuilt functions. But before, we need to understand what is list. If you are familiar with JavaScript, then you already familiar with arrays. Array means in a single variable, we can store multiple values. And if you want to do the same thing in Sass, then we have list. Here you can see, first we take a variable named list, and inside this variable, we set total 3 values, 5 pixel, 10 pixel, and 15 pixel. This is the first method that you can create list in Sass. Let me show you the second method. Here you can use separator between the values. You can use comma. So you can use values without comma, otherwise you can use value with comma. And there is another way that you can create list in Sass. Let me show you. Also you can use square braces to create a list in Sass. And now I'm going to show you the list functions. Using list function, you can manipulate your list. You can add new value in your list, otherwise you can remove a value from this list. You can do lot of stuff using those functions. Our first function is length function. Then come nth function. Next, set end function, join function, append function, zip function, index function, list separator function, and our last function is bracketed function. So we have total 9 list function in Sass. And I'm going to cover all of these in this tutorial. So without wasting your time, let's start the practical and see how it's work. So finally, I am in my Visual Studio Code editor. Side by side, I open style.sass file and style.css file. So at first, I'm going to create a variable named list, $list, then colon, and here I'm going to set some values, 5 pixel space 10 pixel space 15 pixel, then semicolon to end this line. And now I'm going to create a class. Dot class 1. Then insert the curly braces. And then I'm going to call a CSS property, which is padding. And here I'm going to use all the list function one by one. Let's call our first list function, which is length. So here I'm going to type length. Using length function, we can count total number of value in our list. So if I pass the variable name $list and set this file, as you can see, it's written padding 3 because we have total 3 value in our list. If I increase the value 20 pixel and then set this file, as you can see, it's written 4. So as you can see, it count multiple values. And also if I remove the unit pixel, let me show you, and then set this file, also you can see it written 4 because this function is smart enough to identify the values. That's why without unit it can count our values. And if I use comma between them and then set this file, as you can see, now it's also written 4 because we can create our list using space, otherwise using comma. Let's back to the previous position. So I'm going to press Ctrl Z. Not only that, we can pass property and values in length function. Let me show you. First I'm going to use round braces. And inside the round braces, first I'm going to use width property with 10 pixel. Also I'm going to use height property. Height 5 pixel. If I save this file, as you can see, it's written 2 because we pass total 2 value in this function, width and height. This function is quite powerful to identify these values. So this is our length function which can count our list values. Now let's talk about our next function, which is nth. But first I'm going to duplicate this line and comment out previous one. And here I'm going to type nth. Basically we pass total 2 parameter in nth function. In our first parameter we need to pass the list value, and in our second parameter we need to pass the index. Let me show you. So in our first parameter I'm going to pass list, $list. And in our second parameter I'm going to pass the index number. So I'm going to pass 2. If I save this file, as you can see, it's written 10 pixel. Now the question is, why it's written 10 pixel? Because as you can see in my list, at index 2 we have 10 pixel value. That's why it's written 10 pixel. We have total 4 value in my list. It means we have total 4 index in this list. So in our second parameter, if I pass the index number, according to the index number, it return the value. Similarly, if I change the index number 4 and then set this file, now you can see it return 20. Not only that, we can pass negative value also. If I pass -1 and then set this file, now you can see it return 20 once again. But the question is why? Because from left side we count positive values. At the opposite way, we count negative value from the right side. So this is our -1, this is -2, this is -3 and this is -4. If I pass -3 and set this file, you can see it's written 10. So we can print value from this way, otherwise this way. Now let's talk about our next function, which is setInit. So I'm going to duplicate this line and comment out previous one. If you want to add a new value to our existing list, in that case you can use setInit function. So here I'm going to type setInit, set-init. And inside the round braces we need to pass 3 parameters. First our list, then the index number where you want to set. I want to set it at index 2. That's why I pass 2. And in our third parameter we need to pass the new value. And our new value is 30 EM. Here I want to replace 10 pixel with 30 EM. If I save this file, you can see the result. 5 pixel, 30 EM, 15 pixel, 20 pixel. So using this function you can replace a value to your existing list. And also you can pass minus value here. If I pass -1 and then save this file, now you can see it replaced 20 pixel with 30 EM. Let's talk about our fourth function, which is join. So I'm going to duplicate this line and comment out previous one. And here I'm going to call join function. Using join function, we can join multiple lists and we can create a single list. For that, I'm going to create another variable, which is list2. And also I'm going to change those values: 50 pixel, 100 pixel, 150 pixel and 200 pixel. So here we need to pass to our two parameters, list1 and list2. Dollar list, comma, and our second parameter we need to pass our second list, list2. Dollar list2. So if I save this file, you can see it's written a new list, and we have total 8 value in this list. 5 pixel, 10 pixel, 15 pixel, 20 pixel, 50 pixel, 100 pixel, 150 pixel, and 200 pixel. And you can see there is no comma between these values. So basically this function combined two lists and return a new list. But what if we use comma in our first list? Let me show you. And in our second list, I just use space to separate values. If I save this file, as you can see in our new list, it used comma in our whole list to separate values. Also, we can pass another parameter in our join function, which is separator. Suppose I don't want comma between these values. In that case, in our third parameter, we need to pass space. If I save this file, as you can see in our new list, it separates our value by using space, not the comma. And also you can use auto value. It's the default value. So here I am to type auto. If I save this file, now you can see it provides comma between values. But if I do not use comma in our first list and then save this file, by default, as you can see, it's written space. It separates our value using space. But now I want to separate this value using comma. In that case, we need to pass comma here. If I save this file, now you can see it provides comma between values. So our third parameter stands for separator. So this is it for this tutorial. In our upcoming tutorial, we are going to cover append function, zip function, index function, list separator function, and is bracketed function. So thanks for watching this video. Stay tuned for our next tutorials. Hello guys, once again I'm back in my Visual Studio Code editor. And as you can see, side by side I open style.sass file and style.css file. In our previous tutorial, we learned about length function, nth function, setNth function, and join function. But in this tutorial, we are going to cover the remaining ones: append function, zip function, index function, list separator function, and is bracketed function. So without wasting your time, let's start the practical. At first, I'm going to start with append function. So I'm going to duplicate this line and comment out previous one. And here I'm going to type append. Then our round braces. Suppose if you want to add a new value in the existing list, in that case, you can use append function. Suppose in our first list, I want to add 30 pixel after 20 pixel. In that case, we can use this function. Let me show you how. This function adds only single value. In our first parameter, we need to pass the list, which is $list. Then comma, and then we need to pass the new value, which is 30 pixel. If I save this file, as you can see in a CSS file, it's written 30 after 20 pixel. So it's add a new value in our list. So we can add new value using this function. Also we have third parameter that we can use as separator. Let me show you. As you can see, our values are divided by space. So here I'm going to use our third parameter, which is comma. If I save this file, you can see the result. Now you can see our values are separated by comma. You can use any value here: auto, space, comma. Let's talk about our next function, which is zip function. So I'm going to duplicate this line and comment out previous one. And first, I'm going to remove this one and I'm going to type zip. Basically, this function going to join two values. I want to say it add 5 pixel with 50 pixel, 10 pixel with 100 pixel, 15 pixel with 150 pixel, and 20 pixel with 200 pixel. So here I'm going to pass two parameters. Our first parameter is $list and our second parameter is $list2. If I save this file, you can see the result. As you can see, it combined 5 pixel with 50 pixel, 10 pixel with 100 pixel, 15 pixel with 150 pixel, 20 pixel with 200 pixel. Let me show you a good example for this. So here I'm going to take some color name. So inside the round braces, I'm going to take red, green, and blue. Also, I'm going to take another list. Inside the round braces, for red, I'm going to take 120. For green, I'm going to use 255. And for blue, I'm going to use 70. So if I save this file, now you can see red color value is 120, green color value is 255, and blue color value is 70. So this is the good use case of zip function. And if you do not use comma for separation purpose, let me show you. So I am going to remove this comma and I am going to use space. In that case, you can remove round braces. If I save this file, as you can see, it's also worked perfectly. So it's totally on you. You are comfortable with separator or not. You can use comma, otherwise space. So let's talk about our seventh function, which is index. So I'm going to duplicate this line and comment out previous one. And here I'm going to type index. Suppose you want to search something in your list. In that case, you can use index function. So as a parameter, at first we need to provide the list name. And our list name is $list. And in our second parameter, we need to pass the keyword, which I want to find. I want to find 15 pixel. If I save this file, as you can see, it's written index number. It found our keyword at index 3. And if I remove the unit and then search the file, as you can see, it's also written 3. But if I try to find a result which is not exist in this list, let me show you 40 and then save this file. As you can see, it's written nothing. If exist, then it's written, otherwise it's written nothing. Now let's talk about our eighth function, which is list separator. So I'm going to duplicate this line and comment out previous one. And here I'm going to type list separator. List separator. List separator basically return the separator name. Here we need to pass the list name and then it's going to return which separator we use in this list. So I'm going to pass $list. If I set this file, as you can see, it's written space. So here you can see in our list 1, we use space for separate our values. But if I use comma in our list 2, and here we pass list 2 and then set this file, now you can see it's written comma, because here we use comma to separate our values. We have total 2 types of separator, comma, otherwise space. And now I'm going to talk about our last function, which is bracketed. So I'm going to duplicate this line and comment out previous one. And here I'm going to type is bracketed. Is dash bracketed. Basically this function returns 2 value, true either false. It is basically going to check does we use square braces in our list or not. So here I'm going to pass our list name $list. If I save this file, now you can see it's written false result. But if I use square braces in our list 2, let me show you, and then pass, and if I pass list 2 in this function and then save this file, as you can see it's written true. Basically we are use this function with if condition, and we are going to learn about it in our upcoming tutorials. So this is it for this tutorial. In our next tutorial, we are going to learn selector functions. So thanks for watching this video. Stay tuned for our next tutorial. Hello guys, good to see you back. Once again, we are back with a new tutorial related to Sass. And in this tutorial, we are going to learn Sass selector functions. But before, we need to understand what is selector. Here you can see, inside the class 1, we have an anchor tag. And we set hide and width to our anchor tag, which is inside this class 1. So our anchor tag is our selector. But Sass provides some inbuilt function that can manipulate our selectors. Let me show you the functions. So as you can see, we have total 7 selector function in Sass. Selector next, selector append, selector replace, is super selector, simple selectors, selectors unify, and selector extend. So moving forward and start our practical. Here you can see I already opened my Koala application, and side by side I open style.sass file and style.css file. So at first let's create a variable in our Sass file, and our variable name is selector. Then colon. At first I am going to show you what is the usage of selector next function. So here I am going to type selector next. Basically, inside this selector next function, we pass total 2 parameters, and both the parameters should be selector. So for our first parameter, I'm going to take double quotes, and for our first parameter, I'm going to use UL, and for our second parameter, I'm going to use LI. and then semicolon to end this line. Basically, this selector function going to create our first parameter parent tag, and it make our second parameter child tag of our first parameter. I want to say it going to create UL tag, parent tag, and li tag, child tag. It going to combine both the tag and create a selector. To apply it, we need to create a class. For that, I'm going to use interpolation method. So at first, I'm going to type hashtag, and inside the curly braces, I'm going to use our variable which is selector. $selector. So whatever value we have in our selector variable, it's going to paste it here. So inside this selector function, I'm going to use a property. You can use any property. For now, I'm going to use height. Height 20 pixel. So let's set the file and see what we get in our CSS file. If I set this file, here you can see in the CSS file, it create UL tag, parent tag, and li tag, child tag. It combined both the selector and made a combined selector. Basically, this is the usage of selector nest function. Let me show you another example of this function. So I'm going to remove this one, and inside this double quote, I'm going to take total two classes. Our first class is .xyz, comma, and our second class is .abc. And now I'm going to take our second parameter. So I want to use comma, and inside the double quotes, our second parameter is p tag. And if I set this file, here you can see in my style.css file, here you can see it create two different group of classes. First, it select our paragraph tag, which is inside our xyz class. And next, it select another paragraph tag, which is inside the abc class. And if you want to use pseudo class, yes, you can. Let me show you. First, I'm going to remove this class, and I'm going to use only xyz class. Then in our second parameter section, I'm going to type %, our pseudo selector, which is hover. If I save this file, here you can see it use hover selector with xyz class. So here you can see if you want to add two parameter, for that you need to use $sign. Let me clear this section once again. Suppose with xyz I want to add underscore abc. Let me show you. Then after $underscore abc. If I save this file, here you can see it create a new class xyz underscore abc. So this was our first function, which is selector nest. Let's talk about our another function, which is selector append. So here I'm going to remove selector nest, and I'm going to type selector append. Similarly, in this function, we need to pass total two parameters. And this append function going to combine both of these parameters. Let me show you. So in our first parameter, I'm going to use paragraph tag. And in our second parameter, I'm going to use a class. So here I'm going to type .abc. Selector nest function basically provide space between two parameters. But in append function, it's going to combine both the parameters. If I save this file, you can see the result. As you can see, there is no space between p tag and abc class. I want to say it create a single selector. It means all the paragraph tag with abc class height should be 20 pixels. Let me show you another example. Suppose here I'm going to use .xyz class. And in our second parameter, I'm going to use underscore copy. If I save this file, as you can see, it create a new class xyz underscore copy. In our previous function, we need to use $sign to join these two parameters. But in this function, we don't need to use $sign. Now, let me modify this selector and jump one step further. So after copy, I'm going to use comma, and here I'm going to type underscore image, img. So as you can see, in our second parameter, we use two different names, copy, underscore copy, and underscore image. You can take any name as you wish. So if I save this file, as you can see, it creates total two different selector, xyz underscore copy and xyz underscore image. So basically, it combine our first parameter with copy, and again, it combine our first parameter with image and create two different selector. So this is it for this tutorial. and in our next tutorial, we are going to learn about our remaining selectors. So thanks for watching this video. Stay tuned for our next tutorial. Hello guys, good to see you back. Once again, we are in my Visual Studio Code editor. And as you can see, side by side, I open style.sass file and style.css file. In this tutorial, we will continue with selector function. And I'm going to start this tutorial with selector replace function. Let me show you. For that, I'm going to type selector hyphen replace. It is understandable from the name itself, it will replace something. And in this function, basically we pass total 3 parameters. Suppose in our first parameter, I'm going to pass c.xyz. This is our class name. And in the second parameter, we need to pass which we have to replace. Suppose I want to replace .xyz class. So here I'm going to type .xyz. And now in our third parameter, we need to pass the new value. And here you need to pass the value you want to replace with. I want to replace .xyz with .abc. If I save this file, here you can see the result. As you can see, there is no class name c.xyz. It replaced .xyz with .abc. That's why it passed c.abc. Let me show you another example. If there is no h1 class, h1 in our first parameter, in that case, if I save this file, as you can see, it do not replace .xyz with abc. It simply print c.xyz because this replace function cannot find h1 in our first parameter. That's why it print as it is. So this is the usage of selector replace function. Let's talk about our next selector function, which is SuperSelector. So here I'm going to type is hyphen SuperSelector. Basically, we use this selector for testing purpose, not the modifying purpose. And it's written only one value, true, either false. And to understand it, we need to pass total 2 parameters. In our first parameter, we need to pass a selector. But we call our first selector SuperSelector. Suppose our SuperSelector is A. And we call our second parameter SubSelector. And in our SubSelector, I'm going to pass A dot, and also I'm going to set a class XYZ. If I set this file, it is going to return true. But the question is why? Because this function going to search our SuperSelector in our SubSelector. If SuperSelector exists in our SubSelector, in that case, it's written true. So let's set this file. As you can see, it's written true here. Basically, we use this function with if condition. But if I replace the position a dot xyz, and if I remove xyz from our SubSelector, and then set this file, as you can see, it's written false. Because this SuperSelector doesn't exist in this SubSelector. That's why it's written false. So this is the usage of SuperSelector. Let's talk about our next selector, which is simple selector. So I'm going to remove this one and I'm going to type simple hyphen selector. Using this selector function, we can divide our selectors. If we pass combined selector here, it's going to divide these selectors. Let me show you. Suppose I'm going to pass here a dot abc. If I save this file, here you can see it divide our selectors. It creates one selector A and another selector .abc. This is the usage of simple selector. So this is it for this tutorial. In our upcoming tutorial, I'm going to cover the remaining selector functions, selector unify and selector extend. So thanks for watching this video. Stay tuned for our next tutorial. Hello guys, good to see you back. This is our third tutorial related Sass selector function. And in this tutorial, we are going to learn selector unify function and selector extend function. So let's jump into the Visual Studio Code editor and see how we can use this function. So at first, I'm going to call selector unify function, selector dash unify. In this function, we have to pass total 2 parameters. Suppose in our first parameter, I use on the anchor tag. And in our second parameter, I'm going to use dot info. Basically, this function trying to create a match between these two parameters. So if I set this file, as you can see, it create a match and create a new selector, a.info. Let me show you more example related to this function. Suppose in our first parameter, I'm going to type a.active. And in our second parameter, I'm going to pass a.info. If I set this file, as you can see, it create a new selector, a.active.info. It means it's going to select all the anchor tag with active class, otherwise info class. And then it's going to apply this CSS. But if I pass to different selector, let me show you anchor tag in our first parameter and h1 tag in our second parameter. If I set this file, as you can see, it's written error because it did not create any combination between two parameters. So this is the usage of unify function. Let's talk about our last selector function, which is selector extend. So I'm going to remove selector unify and here I'm going to type extend. This function also works like selector unify function. Basically, this function tries to extend a class and try to create a new selector. And in this function, we can use total 3 parameters. Suppose our first parameter is anchor.info. And in our second parameter, I'm going to pass only anchor tag, a. And in our third parameter, I'm going to pass a class dot link. So this function trying to match second parameter with our first parameter. If they found a match, then it print as it is. And then it try to create combination with link class dot link. If I save this file, as you can see, first it create a combination a.info. It means it print as it is because it found anchor tag in our first parameter. That's why it print as it is. And then it create a combination .info.link. This is our another selector. This function always create a strange combination. Let me show you another example. Now in our second parameter, I'm going to pass h1 tag. And in our third parameter, I'm going to pass h2 tag. If I set this file, as you can see, it print our first parameter as it is. And it do not try to extend our selector because it did not found any match in our second parameter. That's why it cannot extend our selector. Basically, we do not use this complex selector function in our project. And most of the time, we use selector next function, selector append function, and selector replace function in our project. So this is it for this tutorial. In our upcoming tutorial, we are going to start map functions. So thanks for watching this video. Stay tuned for our next tutorial. Hello guys, good to see you back. Once again, I am back with a new tutorial related Sass. And in this tutorial, we are going to learn map function. At first, let's try to understand what is map. In our previous tutorial, we learned about list function. This is the example of list function. As you can see, in a variable, we save total 3 values, 10, 20 and 30 pixels. As you know, we can store multiple value in list function. Similarly, in our map function, we can store multiple value. But the process is different. Let me show you. As you can see, this is the example of map function. And we save total 2 value here, 400 and 500. But there is another value inside the inverted quotes. One is regular and another one is medium. These are keys. These are map keys and these are values. It means regular value is 400 and medium value is 500. As you know, in our list we have index. Example, our 10 value index is 1, 20 value index is 2, 30 value index is 3. Using index, we can specify the position of this value. Using their position, you can get the values. If you want to extract third index value, then it's written 30 pixel. But in maps, we do not use indexes. Here we use keys. Here we can set different name for our keys. This is our another example. Here you can see we use a color name green, and for green we use hexadecimal value. Similarly, for blue we use hexadecimal value. Also, we have function in our map similar to the list, and it has some inbuilt function also. Here you can see we have total 6 different map functions: map get, map merge, map remove, map keys, map values, and last one is map hash key. And we are going to cover all of this one by one. So without wasting your time, let's start the practical. As you can see, I already opened my Koala application. And also you can see side by side I opened style.sass file and style.css file. So at first, I'm going to create a variable, and our variable name is fontWeight, $font dash weight, then colon. After colon, inside the round braces, at first I'm going to create our key, and our first key is regular. With that, I'm going to pass our first value, and our first value is 400. Then, I'm going to create our second key, which is medium. Also, our value is 500. And our last key is bold. And the value is 700. Then semicolon to end this line. So this is our map. And now I'm going to use this map. For that, I'm going to create a class dot test. Then inside the curly braces, I'm going to use a CSS property which is font weight. Font weight. And now I'm going to call our first map function which is map get. Then inside the round braces, we need to pass our map name and the key name. As you can see, our map name is font weight. So here I'm going to pass font weight. And in our second parameter, we need to pass the key. And for key, I'm going to pass bold. So inside the double quotes, I'm going to pass bold. If I save this file, as you can see, our font weight is 700. So in mapGet function, we need to pass total two parameters, font weight, our map name, and the key. And this function always return value of this key. And as you know, our bold key value is 700. But what happened if I pass different key which is not exist in this map function? So here I'm going to pass bolds. If I save this file, as you can see, it's written nothing because there is no key name bolds. If the key is exist, then mapGet function return the value. Now let's talk about our next function which is map key. So here I'm going to type map key. In map keys function, we need to pass total one parameter, only the map name. If I save this file, as you can see, it's written all the key from this map. Our first key is regular, our second key is medium, and our third key is bold. So this is the usage of map key function. It's written all the keys name. Let's talk about our next function, which is map values. So here I'm going to pass values. It's also work like map key function. If I save this file, as you can see, it's written all the values. And here we need to pass only one parameter like keys. So this is it for this tutorial. In our upcoming tutorial, I'm going to cover the remaining functions: map merge, map remove, and map hash key. So thanks for watching this video. Stay tuned for our next tutorial. Good to see you back, guys. In this tutorial, we are going to cover the remaining map functions: map merge, map remove, and map hash key. So let's back to the Visual Studio Code editor. So finally, we are in Visual Studio Code editor, and we are going to start with map merge function. This function going to merge two different map and return one map. So we need to create another map. For that, I'm going to take a variable, and our variable name is lightweight dash weight. After semicolon, inside the round braces, our first key name is lightest, and our value is 100. And our second key name is light, and the value is 300. And semicolon to end the line. And now I'm going to use map merge function. So here I'm going to type map merge. And if I pass another parameter, as you know, in this function we need to pass total two parameters. So here I'm going to pass another parameter, which is our another map, lightweight. So I copy the variable name and I'm going to paste it here. But there is a problem. If I save this file, it's going to return error. Let me show you. If I save this file, as you can see, it's written error. Because map merge function return a new map, not a value. That's why we cannot print it directly as a value. We need to create a new variable to store this new map. Let me show you. So I'm going to create a variable named merge. And now I'm going to call this function. So I'm going to cut this function from this place. And I'm going to paste it here. Basically, this function merged two maps and return a new map. And now I'm going to call map keys function. So here I'm going to type map keys. And here we need to pass our new variable, merge. So here I'm going to pass merge. If I save this file, as you can see, it's returned all the keys from our new map. As you can see, first it print regular, medium, bold from front to weight map, and then it print lightest and light from lightweight map. So this is the usage of map merge function. Let's talk about our next function, which is map remove. We cannot call map remove function directly. Similarly, we need to create variables. So I'm going to duplicate this line and I'm going to change the variable name, remove. And here I'm going to call map remove function, map remove. In this function, we need to pass total 2 parameters. In our first parameter, we need to pass the map name, in our case, font weight. But in our second parameter, we need to pass the key name. Which key I want to remove? Suppose I want to remove bold key. So here I'm going to type bold. And if I call our new variable remove in our test selector and then save this file, as you can see, it's written regular and medium key only. It remove bold key. So this is the usage of remove function. Basically, we pass the key name which we want to remove. Now, let's talk about our last function, which is map hash key. So here, I'm going to type map hash dash key. Basically, this function return two type of value, false either true. In this function, we need to pass total 2 parameters. So, as first parameter, I'm going to pass font weights. And as our second parameter, we need to pass the key name. And I'm going to pass bold key. If the bold key exists in our font weight map, then it's written true. So let's save the file. As you can see, it's written true. But if I pass wrong key name, bolder, and then save this file, as you can see, it's written false. So this is the usage of map hash key function. So this is it for this tutorial. In our upcoming tutorial, we are going to learn Sass introspection function. So thanks for watching this video. Stay tuned for our next tutorial.
Hello guys, good to see you back. Once again I'm back with a new tutorial related Sass. And in this tutorial we are going to learn Sass introspection function. We already learned about number function, string function, color function, list function, selector function, map function. And in this tutorial we are going to cover introspection function. So let's see how many functions we have in introspection function. As you can see, we have total 6 functions in introspection. Basically these functions are using conditions. And it's always written boolean value, true either false. So let's start the practical and try to understand how we can use these functions. Here you can see we are in Visual Studio Code Editor and side by side I open style.sass file and style.css file. And as you can see in our style.sass file, we already create some variable, num variable, char variable, list variable, map variable. With that we create a mixin named border radius, also create a function named sum. As you can see in our num variable we save 15 pixel and in our char variable we save a string robo2. And in our list variable we create a list using multiple value 15 pixel, 25 pixel, 30 pixel. And in our map variable we create a map. So at first I'm going to create a class where I'm going to check our introspection function dot test. Inside the curly braces I'm going to use a CSS property which is padding. First I'm going to start with variable exist function. So here I'm going to type variable exist. And here we need to pass the variable name. Basically we use this function with if conditions and it's written true or false. This function going to check if the variable name exists in this file, then it's going to return true, otherwise it's going to return false. So let's check the variable. So here I'm going to pass $, our variable name is map. If I save this file, you can see, oops, we need to remove the $sign and then save this file. Now you can see it's written true. And if I pass a value which is not exist in our file, in that case, let me show you maps and then save this file. As you can see, it's written false. Let me show you one thing. As you can see, we check our map variable. But if I cut this map variable from this place and paste inside this selector, and then save this file, as you can see, it's also written true. Because if the variable exists anywhere in our file, in that case it's going to return true. These are our global variable, but now map is our local variable. Let's jump into our another function which is global variable exist. Let me show you. So here I'm going to type global variable exist. If I set this file, it's going to return false. Let me show you. As you can see, it's written false. But you can see our map variable is exist in our file. Then what's the matter? Because our map variable is not global variable anymore. Now it's local variable. Now our global variables are num variable, char variable and list variable. So if I pass num here and then set this file, as you can see, now it's written true. Now let's jump into our another function which is mixin exist. So here I'm going to type mixin exist. In this function we need to pass a mixin name. So here I'm going to copy the border radius mixin name and I'm going to paste it here. If I set this file, as you can see, it's written true. But if I remove radius and then save this file, as you can see, it's written false. Similarly, we have another function which is function exist. If the function exists in our file, in that case it's going to return true. Function, and if I pass the function name, and our function name is sum, and then save this file, as you can see, it's written true. Let's jump into our fifth function which is type of. So here I'm going to type of. In this function, basically we pass a variable name. Here we need to pass the variable name. By mistake, I set this file, that's why it's written this error. And our variable name is $list. If I pass this variable and set this file, as you can see, it's written our variable type, which is list. Similarly, if I pass char variable name and then set this file, here you can see it's written string. Our char variable's type is string. This function always return variable type. Now let's jump into our last variable which is inspect. So here I'm going to type inspect. I don't find any proper usage of this function because it's print as it is value. If I set this file, here you can see it's written roboto. We just use it for inspect purpose. If I pass list here and then set this file, as you can see, it print our list as it is. I think it's not a very important function. So this is it for this tutorial. Thanks for watching this video. Stay tuned for our next tutorial.
Hello guys, good to see you back. Once again I'm back with a new tutorial related Sass. And in this tutorial we are going to learn Sass content directives. We already learned about Sass mixins in our previous tutorials. Using mixin, we can create reusable code. We can use it as like functions. As you can see, we create a mixin named bd_radius, and inside the mixin, as you can see, we use different properties for different browsers. Here we use prefix. For Chrome, we use WebKit. For Mozilla, we use moz. And then I use the actual property border radius. And as you can see, also we set the value. So whenever we need to call the mixin in our selector, then we need to pass the value as a parameter. As a result, in our CSS file, it's written like this: border radius 5 pixel. From here, we can pass multiple values. But from here, we cannot pass any CSS property. Suppose I want to set border style using this mixin, but it is not possible through this. And to solve this kind of problem, Sass introduced content directives. Basically, we use it to send extra data without mixin value. I want to say with this value, we can send extra data. Let me show you the example. As you can see, we use our same mixin, but here we use content directives. For that, we need to type @content. So whatever we pass, it's going to embed with this value. And this is the way to send data to this directive. As you can see, we call our mixin border radius and we set value 5 pixel. After that, we use curly braces. And inside the curly braces, we need to pass the directive values, border style, dashed. This is our content directives data. And if I set this file, it's going to return this CSS code. After border radius, it said border style dashed. As you can see, it passed our extra data after border radius. So let's start the practical and see how we can use it. As you can see, we are in my Visual Studio Code editor, and side by side I open style.sass file and style.css file. And I already created a mixin named border radius, BD radius. And also I call this mixin in our selector. And here you can see the result in our CSS file. And now I want to send extra data with this mixin. For that, we need to use curly braces. And here I'm going to pass border style. So I'm going to type border style dashed. So as you can see, we send extra data through this mixin. But if you want to print the extra data in the mixin, for that you need to use content directives. So for that we need to type @content. If I set this file, as you can see, now it's print border style dashed. So we send the extra data through the content directives. Now we can send multiple property through this mixin. Let me show you another example. This time I'm going to send complete selector through these content directives. For that, I'm going to comment out all the lines. And here I'm going to create a new mixin, @mixin. And our mixin name is test. And inside the curly braces, I'm going to use only content directives, @content. And to use this mixin, I'm going to type include, @include. And our mixin name is test. Then inside the curly braces, at first I'm going to take a selector, and our selector name is class1. Then inside the curly braces, I'm going to use a property color red. So here you can see, using this mixin, we are going to pass the complete selector with properties. If I set this value, as you can see, it creates a class .class1, and inside this class1 it set a property color. And to run this extra content, we use content directives. Let me show you another example how we can use content directives. Suppose our class1 selector is inside the ID 1. So to send this content inside the ID, we can use it this way. Let me show you. So I want to set an ID, hashtag, and our ID name is men. Then inside the curly braces, I'm going to pass this content. So I'm going to cut this content and I'm going to paste it here. If I save this file, as you can see, it put our directive content inside the menu ID. That's why it print menu first. So we can use content directives this way also. Now menu become parent selector and class1 become child selector. Let me show you another example to usage of content directives. So I'm going to comment out these lines. At first, I'm going to create a button selector, .button. Then inside the curly braces, first I'm going to use border property. Border 1 pixel. And I'm going to use solid border, solid. And I want border color red. At the same time, I want to create a hover selector for this button. So here I'm going to call a mixin, which I do not create it, @include. Include, and our mixin name is hover. Inside the curly braces, I'm going to set border width. Border width 2 pixel. And now I'm going to create the mixin named hover. So here I'm going to type @mixin. Mixin hover. Then inside the curly braces, I'm going to create a pseudo selector for our class. For that we need to use $sign, $column hover. Then inside the curly braces, I'm going to pass the content, @content. We use this $sign because we need to create the hover selector using button. So if I save this file, as you can see, first it create button selector, and then it create button hover selector, and border width is our extra content data. So this is it for this tutorial. In our upcoming tutorial, we are going to learn about it more. So thanks for watching this video. Stay tuned for our next tutorial. Hello guys, good to see you back. Once again, I'm back with a new tutorial related content directives. And as you can see, we are already in my Visual Studio Code editor. And side by side, I open style.sass file and style.css file. Most of the time, we use content directives with media query. Let me show you an example with media query. For that, I'm going to comment out all the previous codes, and here I'm going to take a body tag. Then inside the curly braces, I want to set a background color. Background gray. And now I'm going to create three different media query. @media, screen, and inside the round braces, I'm going to use max width property. Max width. And I want to set max width 1300 pixel. Then inside the curly braces, I'm going to pass a selector, and our selector name is body. So I'm going to use the same selector and the same property. That's why I'm going to copy this section and paste inside the curly braces. And here I'm going to set red background color. So when our screen resolution match with this media query, then it set our background color red. And now I'm going to create two other media query for different resolution. So I'm going to duplicate this section, and here I'm going to set 1000 pixel. I want to set blue background color, blue. So at 1000 pixel browser width, it set our background color blue. And again, I'm going to set another media query. So I'm going to duplicate this portion, and here I'm going to set 800. At 800 pixel, I want to set green background color. So here I'm going to type green. This is the normal CSS method. If I save this file, here you can see the result. As you can see in our CSS file, it print as it is. But now I'm going to use content directives for media query. So to use content directives, we need to create a mixin. So at first, I'm going to create a mixin. @mixin. And I want to use this mixin for media screen. That's why I'm going to set mixin name media. Then inside the round braces, I'm going to pass a parameter. And our parameter variable is width. And inside the curly braces, I'm going to pass this code, media screen. So I copy this code and I'm going to paste it here. And here I'm going to pass our width variable, $width. Then inside the curly braces, I'm going to use content directives, @content. Then semicolon to end this line. And if you want to use this mixin, you need to include it. But first, I'm going to comment out these lines, these media queries. I don't need this now. And now I'm going to include this mixin with include keyword, @include. And our mixin name is media. Then inside the parentheses, we need to pass the value. As you can see, our first max width is 1300 pixel. So here I'm going to pass 1300 px. Then inside the curly braces, here I'm going to pass our additional content for content directives. So our first selector is body. Inside the curly braces, I want to set background red. And as you can see, we use total 3 media screen resolution, 1300 pixel, 1000 pixel and 800 pixel. So I'm going to duplicate this section 2 times. And here I'm going to pass 1000 pixel. At 1000 pixel, I want to set blue background color, blue. And in our last media query, I want to pass 800 value, max width 800. And here I want to set background color green. If I set this file, as you can see, it's written the same result. It's print as it is. But this time, we don't need to use media query word multiple times. We pass our content through content directives. And we already create a mixin for media query. From include section, you can change the screen size. Suppose I'm going to pass 700 pixel. If I set this file, as you can see, it set our media query 700 pixel. Not only that, you can pass multiple property. Let me show you. With background, I want to set border. Border 2 pixel. solid, and our border color is white. And I'm going to set this file. And here you can see the result. Now at 700 pixel, it set our background color green. Also it set a solid border with white color. This is the best usage of content directives. I hope now it's clear for you. So thanks for watching this video. Stay tuned for our next tutorial. Hello guys, good to see you back. Once again I'm back with a new tutorial related Sass. In this tutorial we are going to learn Sass media directives and attribute directives. Let's try to understand what is media directives. Here you can see a class named container, and we set container with 1100 pixel and we center our container using margin. So if we create media query using CSS, in that case we need to use media query in this way. As you can see, we set a breakpoint at 1150 pixel, and inside this media query we set container with 900 pixel. So when browser width achieve 1150 pixel, then it reduce our container width from 1100 pixel to 900 pixel. And as you know, for responsive purpose we need to create multiple breakpoint for different screen size. So we need to create a lot of media query, and also we need to type the container width every time. So unnecessarily we need to set container width multiple times. To resolve this kind of problem, Sass introduced media directives. To use media directive, we can handle this situation. So let's see how we can use it and reduce our unnecessary lines. So as you can see, finally we are in my Visual Studio Code editor, and side by side I open style.sass file and style.css file. And I already opened my CSS directory in our Koala application. So at first I'm going to create a class, and our class name is container. Then inside the curly braces, I'm going to set container width 1100 pixel. Also I'm going to set margin. I want to center the container, so I'm going to use 0 pixel. Also I'm going to use auto value. And now I want to set different media query for different breakpoints. But we are going to type less code in Sass. So inside the curly braces, I'm going to create the media query @media screen, and inside the round braces I'm going to set the breakpoint. So I'm going to type max hyphen width 1150 pixel. So this is our first breakpoint. So at 1150 pixel width, I want to reduce the container width. For that, we don't need to type container again. Just we need to type width property with 900 pixel. As you can see, here we use nesting method. Similarly, I'm going to create two other breakpoints. So I'm going to duplicate this section 2 times. And here I'm going to set max width 950 pixel. So at 950 pixel browser width, I want to set container width 700 pixel. So as you can see, we don't need to use container selector all the time. Similarly, at 700 pixel width, I want to set container width 500 pixel. So basically, you can see in my Sass file, we work with only one selector. But if I save this file, as you can see, it's create total 4 different selector. As you can see, our first selector is our container, and 3 other selector is our breakpoints. So in Sass, if we use @media inside the container section, we call it media directives. And here you can see the difference. In our CSS file, every time inside the media screen, it create container selector. Then inside the container selector, it adjusts the container width. But in our Sass file, if we use media directives, we don't need to use container selector again and again. So this is the usage of media directives. So let's try to understand our next directive, which is attribute directive. In our previous tutorials, we learned about Sass nesting. And here you can see the example of nesting. As you can see, there is a parent class. And inside the parent class, we have a child class. And also we have a subchild class, anchor tag. As you can see, in our parent tag, we set width 1100 pixel. And in our child tag, we set color red. And in our subchild tag, we set color pink. And if I compile this file, it's going to return this CSS code. As you can see, it creates total 3 different selectors. Parent selector, parent and child selector. Also it creates parent, child and subchild selector. So as you can see, it's unnecessarily create parent tag in our CSS file. But I don't want parent selector every time. we can remove it using Sass. To resolve this problem, Sass introduced at-root directives. So in the next tutorial, we are going to learn how we can use it practically. So thanks for watching this video. Stay tuned for our next tutorial. Good to see you back, guys. In this tutorial, we are going to learn at-root directives. As you can see, side by side, I open style.sass file and style.css file. So at first, I'm going to create a nesting group. So at first, I'm going to take a parent class, dot, and our parent class name is item. Then inside the curly braces, I'm going to use a CSS property, and our CSS property name is color green. Then inside this parent class, I'm going to create another class. I want to create a subclass, and our subclass name is item wrapper dot item dash wrapper. Then inside the curly braces, I'm going to use a CSS property, and our CSS property is color red. And then I'm going to take another selector in our item wrapper, which is image. Inside the curly braces, I'm going to take width property, width 100%. Then outside this item wrapper, I'm going to take another class. I want to create another subclass of this item, and our selector name is dot item child. Then inside the curly braces, I'm going to use a CSS property background pink. And if I save this file, as you can see, it's automatically create total 4 selector. Our first selector is for our item, and our second selector is for item wrapper, and our third selector is for image, which is inside the item wrapper, and our last selector is item child selector. Now, if you notice, you can see it repeat item class every time. Now you decide you don't want item class for this portion, for item wrapper and for our image. To resolve this kind of problem, Sass introduce at-root directives. So we need to type here at-root directives. So here I'm going to type @@root. Then I start curly braces. And we need to close this curly braces after image tag. So here I'm going to close this curly brace. And then I'm going to save this file. As you can see in my CSS file, it removed item from our selector. Here you can see there is no class name item. It's print item wrapper image. But in our last selector, you can see the item class again. So this is the usage of at-root directives. Basically, it's remove unnecessary selector names. I hope you got the point. Let me show you another example of at-root directives. For that, I'm going to comment out this section. And I'm going to save this file. So at first, I'm going to take a media, @media. And our media name is print. Then inside the curly braces, I'm going to take a class, dot item wrapper. Then inside the curly braces, I'm going to take another selector, and our selector name is item. Then inside the curly braces, I'm going to use a CSS property, and our CSS property is color red. If I save this file, here you can see it print our media. And inside this print, it select item wrapper item. Then inside the curly braces, it print color red. But if you notice, you can see there is no CSS property in our item wrapper class. This property is from item class. But it's also select the selector item wrapper. But I don't want this item wrapper selector. If we want to remove this item wrapper class, then we need to use at-root directives. Let me show you. So after item wrapper, we need to type @@root directives. Then we need to start our curly brace. And also we need to end this curly brace after that. If I save this file, as you can see, it remove item wrapper and now it select only item class. So as you can see, it directly select item selector. It ignore item wrapper selector, which is completely unnecessary because there is no CSS property inside the item wrapper class. I hope now it's clear for you. And one thing you need to remember, at-root directives come with predefined value, and we call it without. Let me show you the example how it's work. So at first, I'm going to remove these lines, item wrapper. Then inside the media print, here I'm going to take a class, and our class name is container. And inside the curly braces, here I'm going to take total 2 property. Our first property is width 130 pixel. Also, I'm going to take another property which is color. Color red. So we create this CSS for print purpose. If someone try to print the page, then it's going to print our container with 130 pixel and color red. But in our actual website, I don't want this color and width. For this, here I'm going to use our @root directives. @root. And inside the curly braces, here I'm going to use the same properties. But here I'm going to change the values. For width, I'm going to use 100 pixel. And for color, I'm going to use green. It's mean if someone try to print our web page, then it return 130 pixel width and red color. But in our website, it's look 100 pixel and green color. And now I'm going to use the predefined value of @root directives. So inside the round braces, I'm going to pass without. And here we need to pass a value named media. It's mean it is also part of container class but without media. After save this file, you can see the result. As you can see, our print media work this point to this point. And after that, it print without media. So this is our website CSS and this is our print CSS. So I hope now it's clear for you. In the next tutorial, we are going to learn control directives. So thanks for watching this video. Stay tuned for our next tutorial.